Breaking news. The identity of the notorious fraudster who defrauded an entire nation has finally been revealed, thanks to an anonymous tipster. 30% of the country's population suffered as a result of his actions. The total damage is estimated at 100 billion won, and that's not all of his crimes. It turned out that the suspect had been involved in fraud since childhood. The criminal is currently on the run, hiding from the police. Since he is not registered, it is unknown what his real name is. He was described as a 35-year-old unregistered man named Han Jun-woo. Looking at his photo on the news, the protagonist wondered why they were using this photo. The police began to actively investigate our main character. 30 years ago, a man stood in front of our protagonist and asked if he had taken that thing. Looking at the well-dressed adult man in front of him, the main character was puzzled and did not understand what the man meant. Crying and very scared, Han Jun-woo added that he didn't see anything. Throwing his hand behind his head, the man wondered where it had gone. The man realized that he had to run away, because things were starting to get hot here. A luxury kindergarten known for accepting only children from chaebol families. The man thought that he was not even married, but he still came here. He did not understand why he was here. Before finishing his sentence, the man collided with a rich-looking woman, who immediately screamed. Almost dropping his glass of wine, the man managed to catch it, noticing an expensive ring on the rich woman's hand. Having caught the glass, he simultaneously, imperceptibly, began to pull the ring off the stately woman's finger. After apologizing, the man asked if the woman was hurt, to which she replied smiling that everything was fine, and added that she was very glad because the wine had not spilled. Having admitted his mistake, the man asked the woman for forgiveness, to which she replied that everything was fine and that she was not hurt. Apologizing again, the man headed in the other direction, avoiding the woman, clutching an expensive ring in his hand. But suddenly the ring slipped from his hand and flew towards the boy playing on the floor, rolling across the floor and disappearing near the boy. The adult man, having dropped the ring, knowing for sure that it had fallen next to the boy, bent over him. But the man, seeing our main character and hearing his oath that the ring was not his, agreed with him. Because if the boy starts crying loudly, people will pay attention to it. The man realized that it was time for him to get out of here as soon as possible, finished his conversation with the boy and said goodbye to him. While running away, the man remembered the ring and wondered where it had gone, looking back at the boy, to whom the teacher had managed to approach. The teacher leaned over the boy, examining him, trying to calm him down and ask who he was and where he was from, since he wasn't from this kindergarten. The man, who did not have time to run far, managed to hear the conversation between the teacher and the little protagonist, and wondered if he had understood her correctly. The teacher, seeing a man nearby, apologized and asked him if he was the boy's father. Not expecting such a question, the adult was at first confused and wanted to answer the teacher with a negative answer, but he remembered that if he said so, everyone would understand that he was here illegally. Before he could think of an answer, the man caught the boy in his arms, and his daddy shouted, taking everything into his own hands. The man, surprised by what he had just been called, agreed to play along with the boy. The boy started crying and apologizing to his new father, attracting a lot of attention. The man, not expecting this, asked why he was his dad. The adult, seeing the reaction of the female guests in the hall to the actions of his new son, made the final decision to play along with the boy. The man nervously grabbed the boy and walked with him to the exit, saying that there was no way he could leave him. Finally running away and disappearing into a gateway without any extra people, the man with the boy under his arm exhaled. And so an adult asks a boy who he is, and in response the boy pretends that he doesn't understand the adult. Having put the little one down on the ground, the man asked why he called him dad, but the boy replied that the man himself said so. Surprised by the little boy's answer, the man asked another question, when? The little protagonist, opening his eyes wide with complete determination, told the man opposite him that he was a liar, and that he had seen everything. Not expecting such an answer from the little boy, the man began to sweat nervously because the boy saw everything. Looking at each other, the little one asked if they had finished the game. The man asked again. The game, the boy added. The one we were playing. The little hero happily said that it was fun, and he really enjoyed it. The adult man laughed nervously and agreed with the boy. Then he asked where he lived and where his parents were. With a smile on his face, the boy replied that he didn't have a home, and neither did he have parents. After his answer, the boy asked the man in front of him if he also didn't have a home. He was homeless, just like the boy. The man asked again, homeless, and asked again where the boy lived. The little protagonist replied that he was simply going somewhere and doing what he had just done. Until parents come for their children, no one pays attention, no one cares about him, as long as they think that someone will come. Remembering something with the words, "Oh right," the boy reached his little hand under the t-shirt. And then the boy said 2 words, "I won." Seeing the object that the boy took out, the man was very surprised. In his mind he understood. This is it. It was a ring that he had stolen from a rich woman, and which he had later lost, dropping it on the floor next to a boy. The boy asked the man opposite him, who was surprised by such circumstances, whether he had won. The man thought of only one thing, how a young boy had snuck into the kindergarten, pretended to be their child, and how he had deceived the great Ko Il Nam. looking at the happy child with the stolen ring opposite the man who was thinking about his own. This kid is only 5 or 6 years old, but he was able to do such a thing. Very frightened and sweating nervously, the man looked at the boy and wondered who he was. Seeing the scary look of the adult opposite, the kid looked away in the other direction. Seeing how the child looked away, the man came out of his thoughts and realized that the boy was also scared. Realizing what had happened, the man covered his face and thought about what his face looked like. Frightened, like a 5-year-old boy, he objected in his thoughts. And finally the man realized that he was frightened by the child, or rather by the talent of this child. Bending slightly over the child, the man extended his hand to the little man opposite him and asked if he would like to go with him. That day they held hands, and that day the little protagonist had a family. His first father was Ko Il-nam. But there was one thing that the protagonist didn't know at that time. Besides Ko Il-nam, he had 3 more fathers. A little boy turns to a stranger for help with the words, "Mister, please help me." Seeing this scene on TV, the little protagonist eats at the table with his fathers asking them what these people are doing. The first father answered this question. "Do you remember the game that you liked?" He added, "This is what they play." After hearing his father's answer, the baby realized that it was all untrue. To which the second father, opposite Han Jun-woo, asked Han Jun-woo if he wanted to try it too. To which the first father was so surprised that he even spat out the food. The second father added, "If the baby is part of our family, then you can." To which the boy answered with joy, "I want to." In the complete darkness of the night, under the street lamp, Han Jun-woo crept up behind the man and addressed the man, who turned around. Turning around, the man saw a helpless little crying boy standing barefoot on the cold ground, asking for help. Having played his so-called game, the boy received the money and handed it to his second father, asking if he had tried hard enough. The boy was already impatient to play again, while he pestered him with questions about when the next game was and who he would pretend to be. His second father was perplexed as to how the child did it so easily. Having seen the child's abilities, from that day on he was included in all the fraudulent schemes of his fathers. Han Jun-woo became involved in fraudulent operations, and each one he was involved in became successful. But after a while, the little protagonist grew up, and eventually, he began to plan tricks on his own. Han Jun-woo enjoyed watching everyone fall for his lies. He felt like the whole world was in his hands. By that point, he was no longer just a family member, but a full-fledged member of the scam group. Now let's move forward a little bit. The main character snaps at his second father, asking why he got involved with them and whether he listens to him. To which the man, on the contrary, frightened, replies, "It's 100 billion. How could he refuse it? He didn't expect that everything would go so far." The third father bursts into the conversation asking Jun-woo for help, asking if there is a way out, relying on the fact that the main character is smart, he knows the answer. To this the boy answers in the negative, he doesn't know anything and tells them to just give up, it's all over. But this answer did not satisfy the fathers of Jun-woo, and the second father grabs his son by the collar of his shirt, asks something must be, but the main character stands his ground and says, "Surrender." The second father adds, "If they get caught again, they will be tied up." Out of desperation, Jun-woo begins to grind his teeth, but an unknown person takes him by the shoulder and calms him down with the words, "Don't worry too much, Jun-woo." The protagonist turns back and sees his first father sitting there, smiling easily, and saying that it is time to leave. Resigned, Jun-woo closes his eyes and thinks that if he gets caught, he will accept it, and it will even be better that way. And so the main character Jun-woo was caught. He quickly came to terms with it because he was tired of the fraud. In his thoughts, he re-examined his life, started this path without any idea of what it really was. But over time, the only thing that filled him was regret. Lying on the cold concrete floor of the isolation ward, he took stock of his life. Regret was a useless emotion, and in the end, he was tired of it all. His fathers were blinded by greed, and his life was spent constantly on the run. Realizing everything, he slowly closed his eyes. His last thought was, "Yes, this is the end." But suddenly Jun-woo opened his eyes. He didn't understand what was happening, how he ended up here, who was calling him. He had a lot of questions. Having fully realized what was happening and having come to his senses, the main character, sitting on a chair, sees his first father, Ko Il-nam, lying on the floor calling for him. Ko Il-nam lies on the floor with a smile on his face saying that dad did it again, while handing over a chicken leg to the protagonist. Han Jun-woo didn't expect to see his dad again. His father pulls his son out of his thoughts with the words that he was able to protect the chicken leg. The first father keeps telling him to eat the chicken leg faster because he's going to high school, so let him eat while he can. And so again, the main character returns to bewilderment. In what sense will he soon be studying in high school? Fast forward a little bit, the fourth father explains the plan. First, Jun-woo's fathers will dress up as gangsters and wait at the scene. And after Jun-woo graduated from school, the fourth father, without finishing his sentence, turned his attention to the main character, who was not listening. Shouting out loudly throughout the room and knocking on the board, the father asked the boy if he was listening to him. In response to his father's question, Jun-woo, without showing any sign of his thoughts, began to recount the plan. He started by saying that if the contract partner's son goes to school, it will improve trust. Jun-woo will go with the director to the Incheon hotel. After arriving at the hotel, the main character persuades the director to sign a fake contract prepared by Jun-woo. And then Jun-woo tells the director that there is a place where VIPs gather. They get there, and Jang Sung-won and Park Hyung-sik are already there, dressed as gangsters. Then the director would want to cancel the contract, because he didn't want word to spread about his connection with the gangster. After that, they demand money as a fee for terminating the contract. After telling the plan, Han Jun-woo asked if this was the plan, having finished the conversation with the last answer that he did not have a big role in this plan, so he would go. The main character left the table, pushed back his chair and went, heading to another room. After listening to the main character's plan, the fathers were perplexed as to how he knew the full plan. But they immediately found the answer to this question, because he was their son. One of the fathers thought that Jun-woo was entering adolescence. He was acting so strangely, the moment he saw an opportunity, he would pounce on it like a beast, the second father concluded. After leaving the room, Hong Jun-woo's fathers discussed their genius son for a long time. Our main character, entering the bathroom, stood in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection. He thought about the last days he had lived. After fully thinking about everything that had happened to him, the boy realized that he was Han Jun-woo who had returned to the past. Thinking about the fact that all this was real, he decided for himself that he would change his future. But Jun-woo is interrupted from his thoughts by his second father, who suddenly enters the bathroom and loudly opens the door. Having called his son, the father handed him a small amount of papers, saying that all the planned work for the next week was written down there. The boy, taking the paper in his hands and having time to see the amount of work for him, he noted that apparently he would have a rather important role. The main character also added that this work is very important and dangerous, to which his second father objected that everything they do is dangerous. Looking at the papers, the protagonist noted what he should have expected from his father, Jang Chun-hwan, that he was always ready to run away if something did not go according to plan. While reviewing the contingency plan, Jun-woo noticed that it included space on the ship for all four of his fathers, all except him. Having managed to examine everything, the second father turned to Jun-woo and asked if he was scared, to which the boy replied that he was not and was ready for anything. The father also threatened his son not to make friends and to remember that his family is the only one who will accept him. Hearing his father's words, the protagonist thought about how in his past life he had brought countless operations to perfection, and nothing that was guided by him failed. If there was a mistake, it was only in submitting to the will of his fathers. Jun-woo thought so. They brainwashed him to achieve their goals and saw the main character as just a tool for making money. When his fathers told him not to make friends, they probably meant so that Jun-woo would not be exposed. That's what the main character thought. As the main character thought, his fathers were afraid that he might change his mind and run away. But there was one person who sincerely cared about him. His first father, or more correctly dad, told the main character that he could just leave, go another way. But Jun-woo always answered his dad that he was talking nonsense, and it was time for him to calm down. At that time, the main character did not yet know that his first father stopped him only to protect his son. Back in the present, we see our protagonist sitting at a table with his father, Ko Il-namam, discussing what Jun-woo might be doing other than being a scammer. Sitting at the table, the man suggests a lot of things that our main character can do, such as being an ordinary office worker, a consultant. But suddenly the man got an idea and asked Jun-woo about becoming an actor. Delighted with his idea, the boy's father concluded that since his son loved to play roles, then let him be an actor. And so, after the father's proposed idea, he ran into the bathroom shouting at his son. Running into the protagonist's room, Ko Il-nam suggested that his son go eat some meat, as they were both depressed. Sitting in a local establishment, the main character tried the stewed anchovies. Seeing the father, his son appreciated the taste of stewed anchovies. He noted that the main character had previously sincerely hated them. Moving the spoon towards the chopsticks, symbolizing the beginning of the conversation, the father asked what he wanted to tell him. To which the main character, folding his arms and with cold, blood-curdling looks, told his father that he was going to die. Now fast forward to when one of the class teachers was on a school trip and was missing children from his class. Holding the school's pointer stick, it was the same teacher who noticed that on the very first day of the retreat, unfortunately, the weather was bad. Seeing our main character walking in the distance, the teacher sternly ordered him to go faster to his class, pointing at him with a stick. To which Jun-woo, with a displeased expression, agreed to hurry up his class. While the class teacher was explaining what to do and how to behave and asking to listen to him carefully, the main character received a message on his phone. Seeing the message that came, the main character smiled. It was from his father wishing him a pleasant trip. And finally the teacher said that they had little time. Let everyone quickly get ready and get on the bus. And upon arrival line up in 3 rows again, like now, recently. After walking for some time, we see one of the teachers sitting on the couch scratching the back of his head, grumbling that the children are nothing but trouble every time, and opposite this man lies a sealed box. As he opened the box, he was delighted to think that it was worth it. Inside the box, there were various prohibited items during the trip, such as different types of alcohol and cigarettes. The teacher, seeing a full box of prohibited items, was already anticipating how he would drink and have a glass with another teacher. But his anticipation was interrupted by an unknown person who kicked down the door and burst into the teacher's room. Not expecting this, the teacher nervously sweated and turned his gaze to the stranger at the door. This unknown person turned out to be Jun-woo, playing the role of an aggressive schoolboy gangster who burst into the room, stood up and began to grind his teeth, saying how everything pisses him off. Seeing the main character, the teacher objected, asking who he was and why he had burst in, to which the main character, playing the role of an aggressive schoolboy, asked the teacher who he was and who had given him permission to address him like that. The man opposite Jun-woo did not expect such an answer from the schoolboy, and angrily clenched his fists and asked what the boy's name was and what grade he was in. With one sharp movement, the man grabbed the student by the collar of his shirt, saying that he would first teach him a lesson and then call his class teacher. Continuing to play his role, the main character became very tense and gritted his teeth. With one movement of his hand, Jun-woo throws off the teacher's hand, and along with the hand, one of the buttons on his shirt came off. After his actions, the boy added that the teacher should watch his dirty hands. The main character, looking at the teacher's reaction after everything that happened, reminded him that he wanted to call his teacher. Seeing the weakness in the man's eyes, Jun-woo added that he doubted his homeroom teacher would come. The man noticed the main character's tattoo while listening to the boy talk about how his dad and uncle recently beat the crap out of the main character's teacher. Jun-woo, showing aggression with all his appearance, told the man opposite to call the class teacher. The man, not expecting such an answer from a high school student and seeing the tattoo, assumed that he was from a family of gangsters or something similar. An adult watched the picture as our main character sat down on the couch and ordered the teacher to get lost and not try to do anything unnecessary. Having seen and listened to the boy, the teacher discontentedly decided to leave the gangster in the room and go and call the second grade teacher. With the words, "Stay here," the teacher slammed the door loudly, leaving Jun-woo alone in the room. Looking at how this teacher left the room after everything that happened, the main character said that it was easier than he expected. And suddenly, Jun-woo, sitting on the couch, noticed a box on the floor, noticing the items lying inside. Let's return to the teacher, who was already leading the class teacher to the room he had recently been in. The class teacher, heading towards the room, was reluctant to believe the teacher who was telling about the gangster student with tattoos, because that student in the class was quite quiet. With a scream, Han Jun-woo, the homeroom teacher, and another teacher rushed into the protagonist's room. Entering the empty room and not finding who they were looking for, the teacher wondered where the student had gone. Seeing that there was no one in this room except them, the two teachers, the class teacher, holding his nose with his fingers, noticing that it smelled of alcohol here, asked the teacher what he had been drinking here. Denying everything that the class teacher suggested, the teacher began to claim that he did not do such things. But suddenly class teacher Jun-woo saw a large amount of alcohol on the table in the room and pointed his finger in that direction. Coming out into the corridor, the teacher began to swear that it wasn't him, to which the leader, with a very hopeful face, replied that he understood everything. It wasn't the instructor who drank. Looking out the window at the rain, the teachers decided to focus on finding the problem student. Now, let's move on to our main character, who, standing on the cliff, thought about the fact that the performance he had prepared was coming to an end. Standing on the edge of the cliff, Jun-woo thought. He had the final part left. He thought that he would feel complete relief. But even if it was all a lie, the arrival of the end gave him strange feelings. Until today, the main character believed that he lived in a movie. But looking back, he realized that he was only a swindler and a criminal deceiving others. Jun-woo made a decision. Today he will end his 35 years of life. Today is the perfect day for him to die, he concluded. Turning his gaze back to the voices, Jun-woo heard his teachers being found. Standing on the cliff, the main character listened to the teachers who came running to him asking what he was doing there. Looking at how our main character stood in a very dangerous place for life, the teachers asked him to move away from the edge because it was dangerous there. Taking a small step back, the earth under Jun-woo's feet fell into the water. Seeing the dangerous situation the student was in, the teachers rushed to him to save him. And in the end, Jun-woo fell backwards from the cliff into the water, not allowing the teachers to save him. Falling off the cliff, the protagonist mentally said goodbye to everyone, to his parents, to fraud, and ultimately he said goodbye to the past. After some time, having moved to a luxurious-looking theater, we hear something happening in it. Two people are walking down the theater corridor. One of them asks the other person walking in front of them what they should do since the actors have left, and there are less than 5 hours left before the performance. To which the man in the red checkered shirt replies, "Give everyone their money back for the tickets, and let him check the actors' accommodation and transportation costs." To this, the man suggests that the man leaving should file a claim for compensation, to which the man in the red shirt responds negatively and asks to check the information about the actors. As he left his employee, the man thought about the words with displeasure. Trust is important in business. This man's name is Ju Man-sik. 5 years ago, he was a member of the National Assembly. At his rather young age of 45, he was recognized and successful. But perhaps this was his downfall. There were many people around him who tried to profit at his expense, and even those whom Man-sik trusted eventually stabbed him in the back. While he was busy with the power struggle that happened almost every day, he came to his senses. All she had left were fake scandals and a feeling of isolation because everyone had turned their backs on him. Man-sik could only escape the dirty political arena by creating his first business. The first thing he was able to boldly begin was the construction of a small theater. 5 years passed, but not everything was simple with this place. At first, things were going well. Even though it was a small theater in a rural area, it attracted attention because, since the theater was modest, instead of recruiting famous actors, the strategy of recruiting unknown newcomers who had not acquired fame worked well. The director knew very well that the first thing that attracts the audience's attention is the actor's name. But the quality of the performance is not affected by the success of the actors. It is much more important how well they get into character, and also how deeply they touch the hearts of the audience, which is why he gave more preference to newcomers who remained in the shadow of names. The theater was once recognized as a place where real diamonds are discovered, but it didn't last long, and ultimately the actor's dream was Seoul. When they began to be noticed, the fame-hungry actors moved to Seoul theater companies. And this happened for the third time. Lost in thought, the man decided that the problem was in him. Walking along the corridor, lost in thought, Man-sik heard a performance on the stage of the theater behind the door. Leaning against the door, he carefully and silently opened it to observe someone. As he watched the boy, he thought that he expected to see this boy again watching the performance. The man, having observed him more than once, noticed that the boy often watched the actor's performances. He looked like a high school student, but for some reason, he was dressed in work clothes. But nevertheless, after watching, he always left a few bills. In this modest little theater, which hardly has any regular audiences, he is most likely the only one left. After the performance ended, the theater director opened the door to the hall and asked the boy his name, to which the boy replied that he didn't have one. Hearing the answer of the young man in front of him, the man was not satisfied, thinking that this guy did not want to say his name. He also read that every neighbor's mongrel has a name. Having heard a bad answer to his question, the man asked others how old he was, and why the high school student was wearing a work uniform, to which the boy replied that he was 17 and did not go to school. The young man, thinking that he was being driven away and was not allowed to watch the performances, apologized and added that he did not know. The man realized that the boy had misunderstood him and asked him to stop. The boy remembered that he had forgotten something, took the money out of his pocket and handed it to the man opposite. Seeing the money, the man asked what it was, to which the young man replied that he liked today's performance, although he was annoyed that it was cut off in half. Understanding what the young man wanted to convey to the man, he objected that he had not asked for money. But suddenly the man caught his eye on something and grabbed the main character by the hand. Pulling back the sleeve of his sweater, the man saw a wound on his wrist and asked the young man where it came from. To this question, the main character answered that everything is fine, and the man does not need to worry, he will take care of himself. The boy added how grateful he was for the man's concern, but everything would be fine. The boy jerked his hand away sharply and told the man opposite him that it was time for him to go and that he was leaving. Having managed to get a short distance to the main character, the director again asked him if he only liked performances. The interested main character stopped. Adjusting his glasses, Man-sik added that he had other recordings and scripts for plays. Scratching his head, the man realized that by saying this, he looked like a maniac trying to lure a child with candy. But the director still wanted to somehow help the main character and offered him to come in to provide medical assistance. After such a conversation in the theater, the man asked the boy if he wanted something to eat, and so they found themselves in a local establishment. The man was sure that he would be ignored, but he did not expect the main character to agree. Looking at the main character, the man said something like, "Young, handsome, there are better jobs for him," to which the boy replied, "Everyone has their own reasons." The man reached under the table and pulled out a small stack of papers. The boy asked what it was. Staring at the protagonist, the man replied that it was a script he had recently received. Seeing the interest in the boy's eyes, the man asked him if he was interested, and then handed it to him with the words, "Read it." Staring at the script, the main character began to read it carefully. The boy read quickly, page after page, but with a cold-blooded look. After some time, the director abruptly took the script away, saying that the main character had had enough, because he saw the look in his eyes when he read it. The man also said that this script has not been staged yet, so he cannot show everything. Taking the script, the man wondered how a village boy could understand it. He showed it without any ulterior motive. But the main character read the script too carefully, so he decided to take it back. The man was thinking about how he had acted too carelessly, but the guy tore him away from his thoughts with his gratitude for reading. Having heard the gratitude, the man asked the boy, "And that's all you're going to say?" and then asked a couple of questions about how he was feeling and whether it would work out well. The boy replied that how could he know? To which the man added, How could he say such a thing? The man did not calm down. He continued to talk about the script, how it was written by a writer with perfectionism bordering on psychosis, that every word was in its place. The young man remained silent in response to this statement, but the man continued to pester him with his questions like, he doesn't like romance, to which the protagonist replied that this was not the case. He was simply unsure whether this was a suitable script for your theater. Not understanding this answer, the man asked again what this meant for his theater. The boy said, from the second line on the first page, hearing, the man began to search. Having found he mentally read the script, Ju Yeon, Hee-ju and Yoo-jin enter from the edge of the stage with umbrellas. Looking at the main character, he asked, acting out the scenario, Ju Yeon, what his ideal type is. To which the boy replied that he doesn't have a type. He continued according to the script by saying that he didn't find anything in common with the guys he went on a date with. After his line he added, when the line ends, Kyung-soo enters from the opposite side holding an umbrella. And the main character doesn't stop there. He continues to retell the entire script, which he read for just a minute. Looking at the main character in surprise, the man stopped him and asked why the script wasn't suitable for the theater. The man listened attentively to the boy's answer that in the place where the two heroes meet, they say their lines. But that means if there are 3 characters walking, and during their lines they walk about 20 steps in 30 seconds. But the main stage is only 13 meters wide. The protagonist continued to argue that since they were holding umbrellas, even in bright light the actors would be hidden in the shadows. The same applies to the protagonist of the script who appears next. In the shadows his dramatic appearance would be ruined by the umbrella. The main character did not calm down and talked about how to solve this part. For this, you need to choose the location of the action, not the path to school, but a bus stop. And looking at the man opposite, the boy told him that there would be no need to cut the dialogue, and the male character would appear in the middle of the conversation with an umbrella. And in the end, this way you can achieve a dramatic appearance, the protagonist concluded. After listening to the boy, the man began to sweat, because he did not expect such an answer from an ordinary boy. After such a surprise, the man asked the hero to look at other parts of the script and evaluate them. Realizing what the director wanted from the boy, he grabbed the stack of papers from his hands while chewing his food. Having listened to the main character completely, the directors were amazed by his words. The kid told everything in detail about the stage design, the actors' movements, the audience's perspectives, the actors' poses, and the exact moments of increasing or decreasing the light. The main character also talked about the use and placement of color brightness, and the boy even calculated the breathing time between lines down to the second. Having processed all the information, the man realized that even experienced professionals cannot consistently analyze these moments. But here, one comment from this guy is enough to synchronize every element of the script on stage. Having realized this, the man asked the young man in front of him where he studied, and suggested that he probably studied in some company. But the director's interest did not disappear, and, trying to question the main character, he asked him other questions. But the main character replied that he does not do such things. The adult's reaction changed when he heard the boy's answer about how he had just recently started watching plays. And also the main character wanted to watch a movie. But there are no movie theaters in this city. Not having time to recover from the guy's previous answer, the man asked himself. So it was the first time. The director, having put together all the main character's answers in his head, realized that he had first seen this guy 3 weeks ago, which meant that this kid, who had just entered school, had absorbed all the knowledge about directing in just 3 weeks. The performance includes more than just acting, as an ordinary person might think. But in reality, it is not like that. It is a comprehensive work of many specialists from different fields, such as writers, sound engineers, lighting directors, and production directors. Looking at the main character, the man summed up that this seemingly ordinary guy, having looked at the script, did all this single-handedly. And this boy did all this after watching performances in just 3 weeks. Having put the puzzle together in his head, the man suggested to the young man opposite that he rewrite the lines. Considering all the comments made by the main character a little early, the theater director wanted to see more of the young man's talent, asking if he had an understanding not only of directing, but also of acting, which plays a more significant role. With a displeased look, the man accepted the main character's answer that he doesn't know how to act. Upon hearing the answer, the man thought that this was the boy's limit, because writing dialogue is on a different level than directing. Trying to calm the main character, the man said that, in his opinion, the decisive factor was the acting, but the boy responded to this statement that he did not think so. The young man added that the hero's lifestyle is important, and things like habits or tense facial muscles don't disappear in acting. If you don't know this, it's impossible to manage them correctly. Each has its own timbre and tone, even in the same syllables, the main character finished. After listening to the young man in front of him, the man could not understand how he, not being a robot, was able to take everything into account. But still, the man understands that he denies all this because it is difficult for him to accept it. But suddenly the adult was surprised when the boy told him to smile in the mirror. Staring at the boy, the man began to listen to his words as he began to tell how an adult's pupils dilate when he smiles, and how he would be perfect for the role of a serial killer. Seeing the man's surprised reaction, the main character told him it was a joke and left the table. Realizing the so-called joke towards the man, he noted that the guy was a genius in directing and acting. Looking at the thoughtful theater director, the main character asked him if he was leaving. The man did not have time to answer. He looked at the back of the boy who was leaving, who thanked him for the food. After saying goodbye to the main character, the man thought about what had happened to him, as if he had been under hypnosis. Mansick, thinking about who this guy was and that he still had many questions for him, decided that he would see him again tomorrow. Now let's return to the main character, who came to receive his well-deserved salary at work. Turning to the people opposite, he reminded them that they had promised to give the money. Upon hearing that the protagonist was owed 587,000 won, one of the men in uniform became angry, to which the second man sitting on the sofa remarked that later it was never, and said that the boy was still too young to understand how the world works. After thinking about the men's answer, the boy asked again whether they would pay him, to which he again received a negative answer. Exhaling heavily, the protagonist said that people make everything more complicated. The guy had given the men one last chance before. He forgave them several times, because he didn't want any trouble on his head. People said that times were hard now, and they tried to justify themselves in the spirit that it always happens when there are more workers. But do they at least imagine who they are pouring the slop on? The young man thoughtfully asked himself. They probably think that the main character is helpless because he is young and without parents, and the main character knows how the bosses steal money from other workers. So it will be easy to make them confess and leave. But where will the guy look for another job? Standing in the office with his superiors, the protagonist found himself helpless. But suddenly, Mansick burst into the office, loudly throwing open the door and shouting, "Who stole the boy's salary?" But before his heroic appearance, the theater director, sitting in the hall, could not find the boy he liked. While thinking about how the boy should have arrived by now, someone called out to him. Seeing his employee, the director asked him where the 17-year-old boy could be at that time, to which the employee asked what kind of unexpected question this was, and added that he should now, of course, be studying at school. To which Mansick added that this young man does not go to school, but works at a construction site, to which the worker suggested, "Why not check there?" The theater director looked surprised and realized how he hadn't thought of this before. Getting up from his chair, the man ran at high speed towards the exit, and the worker could only shout at his back that they had a meeting planned. As he ran, the man thought about how he hadn't figured it out before, but the main character had mentioned that he worked at a construction site, which meant he should be there, the man concluded. Out of breath, but having managed to run to the construction site, looking at it, he asked himself, "Is this the place?" Upon entering the construction site, the theater director was attracted by noise from a small building intended for workers. And finally we return to the present time, when Mansick burst into a small building. Seeing how the man burst into the boss's room without permission, the managers did not like it. Asking why people steal money from a poor child, the man turned over the table, thereby scattering things on the table. Looking at this whole picture, the boy stood in a state of shock, not understanding what was happening here. Noticing the main character, the man asked him why the guy was standing there. Taking the boy by the hand, the theater director led him to the exit, saying, "Why waste your time on scum?" And so, having been transported to the theater director's office, the main character and the director himself sat down to talk. The man started the conversation by asking why the main character was wasting time on trash. The man continued to yell at the boy without stopping, asking if he was upset that he was not given his salary. The man also asked the boy if he needed help, but the main character refused. To this, the director added with displeasure that when an adult offers help, you should just say thank you and ask the main character to finish this, and it would be better for him to work in the theater, the man suggested. After his proposal, the director began to count on his fingers how much his theater had lost over the past month. After the calculation, the man added that the main character will work here and will be able to watch performances during the work. After the director's proposal, the boy asked him why the man was helping him. To this question, the man calmly replied that he was not helping, but due to a coincidence, the employee who had a part-time job quit, so he was looking for a replacement, the director assured. Having heard such an unperturbed answer from the man opposite, the main character asked him if he really had money to pay the new employee. After this question, the man responded with another question, saying that the protagonist thinks Mansick will deceive him. To which the main character responded positively. After such an answer, the man became angry, and he said how, for his sake, he was ready to work on the construction site instead of him and pay him everything equally. The man thought that he could not allow his child to work on a construction site. He believed that everyone should have their own place. But the main character interrupted him from his thoughts, reminding him of what the director had said earlier. The boy asked if part-time workers could also watch the performances. Moving forward some time later, Mansick leaned against a column and waited for the main character. Looking at his watch and seeing the time, he grumbled that the boy was more meticulous than he thought. A week has passed since the main character started working at the theater. The basement rehearsal room was a bit dirty before, so the man told the boy to clean it up a bit. Back to the present time, the theater director, having waited 3 hours, was still waiting for the boy. Having not waited, the man decided to come to the main character by going down to the basement. Entering the basement, Man 6 shouted where the main character was and how much longer he had to wait. The man saw the main character crouched on the floor collecting books with scripts. Noticing how a man entered the basement, the main character, pointing to the side, began to make excuses. The boy pointed to a cabinet filled to the brim with scripts. The man immediately determined from the scattered books that the cabinet had fallen. Having heard the full story from the main character about how the closet fell while cleaning, the man laughed. Finally calming down, the director asked the guy what he really wanted to do. The guy replied that he just wanted to read one script. Pointing to the table, the director asked why there was such chaos on the table. Couldn't he just read it? And suddenly, in the main character's hand, the man noticed a Russian production called The Seagull. The adult asked the young man why he needed this script. He missed Korean plays, and the main character replied that he had already read them. The man asked in surprise, "What?" To which the main character repeated that he had read them and pointed his finger at the closet. The man looked at the closet and was very surprised. He saw a large number of scripts there. Having looked at the volume of the script in the closet, he asked again, "Boy, have you read all of this?" Seeing the filled closet, the man realized that this was why the guy was reading the Russian script for the production. Looking at how the main character holds the script in his hand, he asked him if he at least knows Russian. The main character replied that he didn't know him, pointing once again to the shelf in the closet. Looking at the place where the guy was pointing, the man saw a Russian-Korean dictionary. Looking at the dictionary, the director noted that this dictionary was only suitable for searching words, to which the main character agreed, and added that he looked at it only to understand a few words, so that he could more or less understand the essence. Looking at everything around him, the man asked a question. The guy arranged all this to understand a few words. Looking at the book again, the director remembered how he had studied this scenario countless times in the past, and the scene that the boy is now watching is before the hero's monologue, where he turns everything upside down in his room in a rage. Coming out of his thoughts, the man noticed how objects were arranged on the table in the form of props. They were not laid out randomly. The guy captured the character's emotions with precision, the director concluded. Looking at the main character, thinking about everything, the man turned to the guy, where he, not knowing the basic terms, studied the classical production, which he himself can barely understand. "Why is he always silent when someone like him is around?" the man cried out, pointing at himself. Without letting up, the director continued asking the main character questions like what his dream was, to become a stage director or a director. And finally, hearing the guy say something, the man stopped and began to listen attentively to the main character. His dream is to simply live like he does now. Hearing such a simple answer, the man asked why all this was happening, to which the guy replied that he had only recreated the scenery before the scene began. The man asked again in surprise. The boy had recreated the scenery before the scene began. He was going to act out the scene. Seeing that the main character did not deny this, the man scratched the back of his head. Looking at the guy, the director concluded that the main character was also interested in acting. From what the man sees, he would be better suited to directing than acting, the man said. Later noticing how the young man was adjusting a recently made prop, the director asked if it was really necessary for one scene, to which the main character explained that he had arranged these things in this way for a reason. Everything should be in its place. After hearing this answer, the adult said that this was all an excuse, and great actors can play out emotions in any conditions, he said. The man objected. "Theater is different," the guy replied. "That's why they have a stage." Noticing how the young man was adjusting the recently made props, the director asked if it was really necessary for one scene. The man, not understanding this answer, asked what acting had to do with it then. The protagonist explained how each part of the scene should work harmoniously, whether it be an actor or a prop, to which the man asked, since harmony is much more important than acting. Having answered this question that the main character wants everything to be perfect, he stood at the table and took a pose. The man captured the moment of a man with nowhere else to go and nothing to lose. He wasn't just chatting. Among the props he became a completely different person. And how did he do it? The director asked himself. Bloodshot eyes, stained red by burst blood vessels. A physiological reaction that cannot be caused by acting alone. Is it really possible to achieve such a level of immersion in such a short time? The man wondered. What's the point of all this? The guy, playing his role, shouted, slamming his fist on the table. But the main character miscalculated one thing. He completely forgot about the props on the floor. And so the boy, having slipped on the scattered props, was flying with his whole body. "Be careful," the theater director shouted. And he thought about how the scattered things were bothering the boy. But the main character manages to grab the back of a nearby chair with his hand. And so, having managed to grab the chair, the young man did not fall and continued to play. Playing further, having moved it closer to himself, the main character sat on it, clutching his head in feigned hopelessness. Having replayed everything that had happened earlier, the man determined that there had been no mistake. Even when he fell, he grabbed the chair quite naturally. his posture and the angle of his sagging body, the broken props around him. Even the blank expression on his face showed that he didn't even have the strength to stand up, the man thought. He was absolutely right. All the details are in harmony with each other, the director concluded. Having fully considered what he saw, the man said that this would not do. The main character needed to go on stage. The man finished, looking at the guy's cold, blood-red gaze. 2 years have passed since the main character broke off contact with his fathers. Without an ID, even getting a part-time job was difficult. But Junwoo could have an easier life if he put in the effort. But he vowed not to do such things again. The daily construction was a rather pleasant routine. Yes, no matter how wrong it seemed, the main character liked to live like this, even though he knew what he so desperately wanted. But suddenly, while the main character is in thought, someone interrupts him and starts calling him furiously. Another worker from the construction site calls him, asking why the high school student is here, and suggests that he go to the recently opened theater. The protagonist's eyes lit up again, and he went to see his first performance. When he came to the theater, he didn't even know that they were showing plays there. He expected to see a strange film. Looking from the back of the hall, Junwoo noticed an adult man sitting in front of him, who was closely following the performances. A man sat in the middle of the room and sighed heavily, but it wasn't that important, the guy reasoned. The main character was very disappointed that it was not a movie, however. For the first time, he felt so amazing. The energy of the actors on stage rather than in front of the camera seemed like a completely different kind of charm from the cinema. For a moment, Junwoo even had the desire to go on stage. It started that day. As soon as the work was finished, the protagonist went to the theater, his body moving before he realized it. And then the time came when the theater director approached him and asked what the boy's name was. A man who looked like a theater employee was persistently asking him if the boy could come to the man to get quick medical help. His persistence irritated the protagonist a little. But it wasn't that bad. The guy noticed that the theater employee had a slightly rude manner of speech, but he didn't look like a person who could do harm. There are other people like him besides him. This man also seems to have a hard life, the guy suggested with a smile. Back in the present, the protagonist has just finished playing out his role, and again the man repeated with serious intentions that this would not work. The main character must go on stage in the men's theater. The man didn't expect this from the guy when it came to acting. Despite his great talent, the main character is only 17 years old. A 17-year-old boy with disabilities. The man knows that this guy is very smart. But this and acting are two completely different things. However, that was only his limited thinking. The abilities that amazed the man were simply preparation for action. The theater director concluded his thoughts. We should not take the action here, but to the real stage. The guy said that, to be honest, he had no intention of pursuing acting on stage. To this, Mansick responded that the boy simply did not realize how wonderful his talent was, and the man suggested that the boy trust him so that he could achieve greater heights. To which the main character replied that he was satisfied with the current state of affairs, and added that he was not looking for fame. Hearing such an answer, the theater director was very surprised at the boy, because the kid knows about his talent, but he is not interested in fame. His attitude to the matter is as if he himself understands that if he becomes an actor, he will become famous. No, perhaps just fame won't be enough. Even so, a man cannot give up. The man turned to the main character and said, Listen, he understands that he had a difficult past. It wasn't easy for him to come to this either. The man, screaming, added that he would take care of everything that would happen next, so let the guy do what he wanted. To which the main character asked, that is, the man is even ready to kill for him. The man with complete determination in his eyes said that he was even ready to kill for him, so the guy is in. And here is the main character, already standing on the stage, waiting for his performance to begin. Standing behind the curtain, Junwoo thought that he was just pretending. He wanted to play roles. The curtain began to open and the main character saw a hall completely filled with spectators. Having completely opened the curtain on the stage before the audience, a new actor of this theater appeared. Looking at his new young actor with great talent, the man said, Here we go. A man standing nearby asked the director if this was the guy he was talking about. The man in the baseball cap continued, Was this kid able to prepare well, since the lead actor had only left 5 days ago? Exhaling confidently, the man smiled after such a question towards the young talent. The man explained to the worker in the baseball cap that the person who was now standing on stage had learned everything not in 5 days, but in 12 hours. To which the guy asked again what the director had said. To this, the man repeated with a confident look, This boy learned everything in just 12 hours. The main character sat down on a chair and began to play his role on stage. The audience in the front rows of the stage began to whisper when they saw the boy playing. The main character, seeing the audience's reaction, continued playing. And now the main character has moved on to the hardest part of the performance, boy. The audience, seeing how well the actor played, continued watching in bewilderment. Sitting on a chair, the guy, cowering, prayed for a loved one for his played hero. And suddenly the main character stood up abruptly, causing the chair to tip over behind him. Afterwards, the actor fell to his knees and began to scream out his character's lines. The audience found themselves completely immersed in the scene, and they even believed that this guy's performance was true. Watching from the side of the stage behind a screen, a guy in a baseball cap asked the man where he found the beast, and the director only thought that even with slightly incorrect vocalization and breathing, everyone in the audience would look only at the actor. The man and the guy in the baseball cap continued watching with full focus on the main character. The actor has made the life of the character he plays his own, and his lines change easily with every surge of emotion. If there was a real character on stage, he would speak like that, the director concluded. After some time, another actress came on stage, playing the role of the beloved. And suddenly the heroine of the play began to fall, and the main character caught her. The actor, acting out, turned to the actress with a request that she did not do this. The actress, acting out her role, began to calm the guy down, but nothing foreshadowed trouble, and suddenly the heroine forgot her words. Seeing that one of the actors on stage had forgotten his lines, the director grabbed his head. This happens often to new actors with little experience of acting on stage. While this is not a problem in films, it is not a problem in live acting, the man concluded. The main character, realizing that the actress had forgotten her lines, decided to save the performance. The guy hugged the heroine of the play and thus was able to save the performance. After such a rescue, the curtain on the stage began to close in front of the audience. After the curtain had completely closed, the entire audience stood up and began to applaud. After finishing his speech, the man laughed, thinking about how this scene had been prepared in 12 hours. Many actors need at least 2 weeks to analyze and understand the characters, in addition to memorizing their lines and rehearsing their movements in accordance with the scenery and props on stage. In 12 hours, the main character had to barely remember his lines. However, he even made up for the mistake of the supporting actress at the end of the performance. The theater director and his employee stood in bewilderment, looking at the main character. The guy in the baseball cap wondered how a 17-year-old kid could prepare for the performance, to which the man, smiling, replied that this child not only prepared himself, but also prepared the concept of the stage, the size of the chair, the movements, the light and the colors. Hearing how the main character had prepared himself, the theater worker realized everything, and the guy asked why the director allowed the hero to do all this, to which the man gave examples of statements about the main character's script, and added that this young man is a genius in his performance to the public. Moving on to the main character, the hero sits and thinks about his performance, thinking about what kind of feeling he has. After all, this is not his first time playing. Even in his past life, when he was cheating, he played countless times. The boy knows about the existence of his talent. But all that game from the past cannot be compared with the recent one, the boy thought. All eyes were on the main character's performance on stage, and even some of the spectators were moved to tears while watching the stage actor. When the emotions reached their peak, everyone, including the guy, seemed to have entered another world for a moment. The guy fell into thought about how, before all this, he was ready to die, and even renounced his name, and he believed that he could live like this, whether the main character could do it. After some time, Man-Sick burst into the actor's room with great intentions. Seeing the director, the actress already began to apologize for her performance, but the man walked past her. And so, taking on the main character, the man enthusiastically asked why the guy was being modest, having such talent. The girl watched as Man-Sick continued to interrogate the boy, to which he asked the man to let him go. Finally, when the man let go of the protagonist, he said that he was captivated by the lines, and he wanted to get out of them. Not understanding such a modest answer, the director asked the guy not to talk nonsense. The man thought about the boy's words, because he had heard them somewhere. The woman, sitting with a microphone, talked about how real preparation lies in developing the character within yourself. If you look at the script for too long, there is a risk of getting stuck on lines without understanding them. If you understand the character well, the sentences come naturally, which is why a woman tries not to read the script for too long when she is on the set, the woman finished saying. Everything the woman said to the people in front of her, among whom sat Man-Sick, who wrote everything down. And now, having moved to the present, the man did not expect to hear the same answer from someone who had just started. The guy, seeing the director looking at him, continued talking about how there were too many unfamiliar words in the script, which gave the guy a headache. After listening to the guy, the man again thought about how the main character, not knowing the basic terms, says such things. Scratching his chin, the director realized that this kid was already at a different stage than he was. The man is interrupted from his thoughts by his worker, who bursts into the room and reminds him of the beginning of the second act. Getting up from his chair, the main character, saying that they would see each other later, headed towards the exit of the room. After some time, Jun-woo, having played his role, said goodbye to the jubilant audience in front of him. But among the spectators sat some stranger, who noticed to himself that he had found who he was looking for. The next day after the performance, the main character, as usual, sat in his basement and read scripts. The director interrupted the boy while he was reading the script, entering the room with a bag in his hands. The protagonist asked what was in the bag, to which the man poured the contents of the bag onto the floor. Seeing what was in the bag on the floor, the main character's eyes lit up. Various books with scripts were scattered haphazardly on the floor. Thinking about books, the guy noticed that in this village where they were located, there was only one bookstore. The main character smiled, thinking about how the director had traveled a long way in the heat for books for him. Seeing the boy smile, the man was very happy for the boy's smile, although he did not show it. The man thought about the fact that, to be honest, he was not sure whether the guy needed such theories. Did he not thus conclude his genius instincts in the forum? The man concluded. While the director was deep in thought, the guy read the new script and found it funny. The man asked the boy if he had bought the scripts, and the boy replied that he was quite happy and that he was studying. Hearing this reaction, Man-Sick laughed and asked the guy if this was really his first time studying. How can he play then if he doesn't know anything? The man finished. The guy replied that it's not only actors who play well. Not understanding this answer, the theater director asked what it meant, to which the kid, instead of answering, added that people like the directors outside are eaten alive. The man dives into business without much thought. The boy finished explaining. Realizing this answer, the man said how such a small thing could know anything at all and asked when was the last time he did something like this. The main character, with an imperturbable look, replied that the man was doing it right now. Seeing the protagonist depressed by his answer that the man doesn't even know anything about the guy. Slamming the book shut, the protagonist asked the man next to him if he wanted him to become famous. To this question, the man answered with a negative, and that he did not think so. The guy asked another question then. What does the director want? The director answered that he just wants the main character to do what he wants. It took him a long time to realize this about himself, the man added. Looking at the boy, the man added that the boy might feel like the man was simply using him. But even if the guy had completely screwed up on stage, the director would still have gone to the bookstore today. Man-Sick finished with a confident look. To which the main character exhaled encouragingly, and added that if he had understood that the man was using him, he would have razed the theater to the ground. And the main character said how much he valued these books, he would need them sooner or later. Having heard this answer, the man asked the young man if he was telling the truth, to which the guy replied yes. Smiling, the main character set himself the goal of one day repaying the man. After some time, someone near the theater greeted the theater director. The stranger asked the surprised man opposite if he was the owner of the Tetra. Seeing the man in front of him, Man-Sick wondered what this man was doing here. The stranger in front of the director was one of the members of NK Entertainment, which is famous for being the center of top Korean actors. Among them, this man is known for selecting actors for projects and conducting castings for major films. Most of the films he starred in became big hits, and he is not even an actor. But even ordinary people know him. The man introduced himself as Choi Jae-min, and that he was the director of NK Entertainment, to which Kim Seok confirmed that he was the director of the theater, and then asked what brought the man here. The director of NK Entertainment replied that he came here after watching yesterday's performance, and he really liked it. And he also came to see yesterday's young actor. The man asked if this guy was a member of this theater troupe. Man-Sick answered positively. The director of NK Entertainment, apologizing for how he came without warning, added that he came to this guy with a proposal. But the man continued speaking without stopping, telling how much he enjoyed yesterday's performance. The director of NK Entertainment noted how irresistible the main character was yesterday. Having finished praising the young talent, the man suggested that the boy visit the casting. The man stated that it was quite difficult to find a young actor for his upcoming project. Usually even the diamonds among child actors, just smart kids who don't know how to act much. It's hard to find true maturity, and this guy portrayed the life of a 30-year-old man without any awkwardness, the man said. Remembering how the main character spoke yesterday, the director added that he even went further. Looking at the theater, the man could not have imagined that such talent would be hidden here. Man-Sick said that he completely agrees with Choi Jae-min. This kid has impressive abilities. The theater director asked the man opposite if he already had a specific plan for the guy. Man-Sick added that he was aware of the caliber of NK Entertainment professionals, and he wants to ask if they are going to offer things like basic training, participation in large domestic and international projects, and the opportunity to study abroad and be invited to major events. The man responded positively, and added that they cannot give these opportunities for free to beginners without any experience. Reminding the main character Man-Sick of yesterday's performance, he told the man opposite that he should understand him, to which Choi Jae-min replied that he would try his best. Man-Sick added with disdain, if they hesitate so much, then they do not fully understand the boy's potential. What he saw was only a small part of what he can do, the director of the theater finished. Hearing this statement, Choi Jae-min handed over a business card, saying that they only wanted to offer an environment in which the young man could flourish. Man-Sick accepted the card, and the man added that he hoped, as someone who cared about the boy, he would take the path that would be more beneficial and faster for him. Lying on the floor surrounded by scattered scripts, the guy wondered what to do next. It's not that the main character has money, but he's not someone who's dependent on money, the guy thought. Watching the main character through the slightly open crack of the door, the man saw how bored he was already. The director decided to visit the boy and check how he was working on his knowledge. Having noticed the scenarios around the main character and taking one of them, the man said that he was apparently interested in something, to which the main character responded positively. Holding an open script with Man-Sick's notes, he said that it had already been translated, to which the main character said that he thought the translation was a little wrong. After listening to the main character, the director borrowed the script from him with the pretext that he would watch it, since he had worked in this field for 5 years, but had learned it in 10. Thinking that the man had finally become useful, the boy pointed his finger at him where to look. Looking at the place where the main character Mansik pointed, he was surprised. Seeing the text, the man wondered what kind of language it was and thought that he had only read old texts in translation. Realizing the hopelessness of the situation, the man decided to retreat. The man stood up abruptly and headed towards the exit at great speed, shouting how his stomach hurt, and adding that the boy should see everything himself for now. After such a spectacular exit, the theater director slammed the door and then leaned against it, clenching his fists. The man thought about how this guy was literally his dream come true, and how he had already managed to outgrow the man. Standing at the door, the man exhaled, and discovered that he had never felt so insecure, although he had failed more than once. How long can he guide the boy given his limited experience? After some time, the main character approached the man with a new question. He looked at him with an uncertain look. After watching again what the guy Mansik showed, he realized that he knew it. What the protagonist showed was Brecht's theory of the fourth wall, which described an imaginary wall between the stage and the audience. The man began to talk about how, during Brecht's performances, the actors break down this wall and interact directly with the audience. Due to this, the theater turns from entertainment into a platform for social messages. After telling the story about the theorem, the man handed the book back to the boy. Sometime later, a stack of books landed on the desk in the director's office. Sitting down at the table and picking up one of the books, which had the title Understanding Theater, the man began to examine it. The director never thought that he would return to studying this book again. And so the man was again filled with the same passion for learning as when he first came to the theater. But this passion did not last long. The man again thought about the young genius, who, given his natural talent, determination, and passion, the speed of his growth amazes the imagination. He doesn't need theory books anymore. This kid has surpassed the professional level, the man concluded. When the staff goes home, the protagonist decorates the empty stage and perfectly transfers the script. He absorbs the emotions, habits, and movements of each character, and even the changing angles of lighting make sense in each scene. He rewrites dialogues, keeping the emotions of the characters. It's not just practice. He fills the stage completely and enjoys it. It's a different level of art. Watching the male protagonist prepare the stage for his performance, he decides to contact NK Entertainment. After calling, the man greeted Mr. Choi Jae-min and introduced himself as the person calling him, asking for a personal meeting. The next day after the call, Mansik invited the main character to go out to eat. And now they are here, the man has his nose down, not knowing how to start a conversation with the guy while he is eating. The man sighed and wondered what he should do. Fast forward to yesterday, when Mansik called the director of NK Entertainment. The man said that he agreed to all the conditions that were mentioned to him. Choi Jae-min asked the man if the young man had any wishes, and if so, he would like to hear them. To which the man replied that he had already said them. Looking at the main character Mansik, he asked Choi Jae-min when they could arrange a meeting. The director of NK Entertainment responded that it was possible right now, and let them consider this trip as a process in which they would see whether the acting skills of the young man suited their company. Under these conditions, the contract must be confirmed. No aspiring actor will dare to refuse my offer, Choi Jae-min assured. Looking at the main character, the man thought that, judging by the guy's behavior, he didn't think that he would readily agree. The theater director asked the guy, to which he replied that instead of going to Seoul, he would spend that time looking over the script. And how to convey this to him, the theater director thought about this. Seeing that the man was not eating, the main character asked him why he was not eating. Seeing the boy eating with ease in his mind, Mansik wondered why he felt awkward around him. After his thoughts, the man asked the main character whether he had been to Seoul, to which the main character responded in the negative and continued eating. Upon hearing that the guy had not been to Seoul, the man banged the table and shouted why he had not gone even though he had the opportunity. Realizing that he had almost gotten off topic, the man stopped. The man continued asking questions such as whether the boy had heard of the Yuksum building, and assured him that he would be shocked when he saw it. To which the man continued to talk about this building, showing one finger on one hand and 3 on the other. He said that there are 63 floors. But the main character didn't care at all. Continuing to eat, he replied that it was wonderful. Realizing that all attempts were hopeless, the man said that he had business in Seoul and invited the boy to go with him. The man added that the place he was going to was on a completely different level compared to this village, located near Mudan. There are simply huge buildings built there, and there is also the Han River. It is not comparable to the small river that flows in their village. The main character ate, lost in thought and listening attentively to his interlocutor. While the man in glasses was trying to put together a sentence with a trembling voice, our hero interrupted him, asking if he was really going to send him away. To which the man immediately replied that this was not the case, and then, in the same trembling voice, added that he simply wanted him to look at Seoul. Our main character, while eating, answered incomprehensibly that this upset him, saying that the bespectacled man is greedy when he needs it. He immediately asked him again, asking what the young lad meant. His whole face was covered in sweat. He mentally asked himself if the boy really knew about everything. He began to wonder when he might have heard about it, thinking that it might have been during the phone call or when he contacted Choi Jae-min. And if the bespectacled man knew this, he would have talked to the boy first, and then decided this issue. Exhaling heavily, he asked the black-haired man if they would go to Seoul. Our hero, looking up from his meal, casually replied that if it was necessary, then they would go. The old man asked the boy if he wanted to visit anything, but our hero immediately answered negatively. The bespectacled man lowered his head and thought that even though he said it as a joke, he still believed that he was taking him because he needed professional training. He immediately broke away from his thoughts, saying that the reason was not that he wanted him to improve his skills or something. The boy responded with agreement. The protagonist looked at his interlocutor, thinking that the old man was fussing too much. He had to meet people at least of his level, despite how well he plays. There are only beginners here, the bespectacled man continued to think, saying that it would be a blessing if he didn't lose his talent. He began to think again. Our boy interrupted his thoughts, asking where this place was. The old man answered that it was NK Entertainment, but then added that in any case, he would find people who would appreciate his abilities. Hearing this, the young boy exhaled heavily and breathed a sigh of relief. The old man thought tensely that this was very unlike the boy, and assumed that he had broken some prop. After a short silence, the old man asked the boy again if he was really going to go, but the only response was silence. After some time, Mansik and the main character were already in the NK Entertainment office. The man noticed the film set that he saw on TV. Near the film set, the bespectacled man noticed some recently released equipment. The main character, seeing how the director reacted to everything around him, felt ashamed of him. Finally, when the escort came to the guests, the guy turned to the man and called him, saying that it was time for him to calm down. He was not a country bumpkin. Leaving the guests, the escort asked them to wait here, to which the man, standing in front of the door, exhaled in fear. After some time, having gathered his strength, the man reached for the door handle. Not realizing what was happening, the boy asked the man if he was going to go with him. But the bespectacled boy replied that he simply wanted to open the door for him. At this, the main character, not understanding the man, went up to the door himself and reached for the door handle. Not expecting such actions from the guy, the man asked him to behave well. Entering the office, the main character saw two people sitting at the table in front of him. The men greeted him and added that they had been looking forward to his arrival, after which one of the men pointed to a chair, inviting the boy to sit down. And so, having sat down at the table, the main character saw these two men in front of him close up. The guy already knows the man on the left. It's Choi Jae-min, the director of NK Entertainment. And next to him is the main actor of NK Entertainment, whose name is Gil Jun-ho. Returning to the moment when the main character had just entered the office, the people sitting at the table greeted the guy and invited him to sit down. Sitting at the table in front of the main characters were two important people from the NK Entertainment company. The director was sitting on the left, and the main actor of their company was on the right. But to be precise, at that time he was not yet a leading actor, but anyone who liked films could not help but know him. At that time he was actively working as a supporting actor. In general, someone like him could not visit such a place. That means Choi Jae-min took it on purpose, the black-haired man concluded. And so the conversation began with the director asking the name of the main character, to which the guy hesitated and said that he didn't have a name yet and added that he would choose one soon. Having misunderstood the main character, the man thought that the black-haired man was already thinking about a pseudonym. Looking at the boy, the man noticed how the boy was not at all nervous, assuming that he did not know the director. To continue the conversation, Choi Jae-min suggested that the main character get to know each other better, starting with how the man praised the performance that he recently saw the guy perform. And then the stately dressed man asked the boy when he started playing, to which the main character deductively answered that since the performance was 2 weeks ago, it started around this time. The director, not understanding this answer, argued that he had seen this performance, but when he started playing, the main character calmly replied that it was his first time. After the dark-haired man repeated his answer, the man still did not understand it. But after thinking through what the boy had said, the man did not believe him. Moving away from his thoughts and moving on to continue the conversation, the man handed over a script with the title, Miraculous Change. Having picked up the script, the guy was told that the company was going to make a film. As the main character remembers from his past life, this is a story about a high school student and his 40-year-old teacher who swapped bodies. After the dark-haired man was explained the plot, which he already knew, the man asked to move on to a more serious conversation after he saw the hero's performance. But suddenly, the main character was interrupted from listening attentively by a rustling sound behind the door. At this time, Mansik stood behind the door, trying to listen to the words of people and hear at least something. Returning to the dialogue, the director offered the main character from page 34, and the man sitting next to him was perplexed why the guy didn't say a word to him. The most promising actors he has seen in recent years come up to him and beg him to watch their performance, claiming that they admire him. Looking at the guy, Gil Jun-ho noticed that he didn't look desperate. And watching the director look at the boy, the man realized that the Choi Jae-min he knew would have already thrown him out and done everything to stop him from playing anymore. The protagonist began to immerse himself in the scenario, starting with the location, a school corridor full of laughing and chatting schoolchildren. After reading the script, the guy realized his role, which he would now play. The character in the script grabbed the collar of his shirt and tried to figure out where he was. Hearing his voice, the main character of the script wondered what was happening to him. After reading the beginning of the script, the director of NK Entertainment asked the main character how he liked it, and also suggested that the boy try it, to which the black-haired man, having examined the office, replied that he couldn't do it right here. The man in the suit, hearing this answer, asked why the guy couldn't. The protagonist added that he could not complete the lines. Angrily, director Choi Jae-min asked if the guy meant that it was because of the location that things were hard, and the man later added how many people trained in places like this. The main character responded to the man's words by saying that he had not touched on the immersion in any way, but had spoken about the lines. The black-haired man began to list seemingly insignificant things for the lines, the script, the sound of a skateboard. Laughter and chatter throughout the school setting in the script, the hubbub of schoolchildren enjoying themselves during a break, and even the wind that blows through the window. The main character concluded that he should mix with words, but here in this room there is none of that. Hearing such a remark, the director of NK Entertainment thought about the dark-haired man's words. At the same time, Gil Jun-ho also thought about the words of the main character. And suddenly the pumped-up man stood up from his chair with determination to take the script. The man in the business suit did not expect this from Gil Jun-ho, and asked him what he was doing. After the man, not recognizing the answer, looked at the person next to him and noted that he had never seen Gil Jun-ho like this. Choi Jae-min remembered man's 6 words when he asked if they were going to offer the guy things like basic training, participation in projects, the opportunity for the guy to study abroad. Turning to the main character, the man asked if the guy was satisfied with the conditions, if they were not quite ideal, and whether he could at least try them. The protagonist realized that he had misunderstood the men in front of him. He thought that he would have to act, but it was just an audition. The dark-haired man also noted how necessary a partner was in this scene, and that's why the guy wants Gil Jun-ho to be the lead actor this time. After his words, the main character remembered scenes from the film with the acting Gil Jun-ho, which he saw in his past life. The guy in his head considered this proposal very funny for himself. Looking at the director, the young man offered the man to give him another script, citing the fact that they should have it. The man asked why the boy needed another script. The main character replied that in his opinion, it was better for 2 actors to play together rather than alone. The boy offered to play together with Gil Jun-ho, but the man did not expect this. The protagonist summed up, looking at the men in front of him, how he was ready to play together with Gil Jun-ho. Hearing such a bold request, the director of NK Entertainment chuckled, referring to the fact that this young man in front of him was quite brave due to his youth. Laughing, director Choi Jae-min told the guy that it would be quite a challenge, to which the man next to him said that he was willing to try. Choi Jae-min was very surprised by Gil Jun-ho's answer, but the muscle man asked the director to find another script. Still not recovering from the answer of the person next to him, the man in the suit wondered why Gil Jun-ho would play with the guy. And so the professional game between the 2 genius actors began, with the pumped-up man starting first. Standing in front of the boy, the man played out his character's misunderstanding of how the young man ended up in the body of an adult. Seeing how the future protagonist of NK Entertainment started acting, Choi Jae-min expected such an excellent performance from him. Finally, the main character's lines began. He responded angrily to the aggression of the person in front of him, as he was also upset. Afterwards, the jock continued playing, and said that the guy had gotten into a young body, and he into an old teacher. The man added how old-fashioned his clothes were, to which the main character acted out his character's anger. The man managed to accidentally move away from the game and looked at the main character with a startled look. The jock saw how brilliantly the high school student in front of him played. Well, remembering how they play, the man continued to play his worried character, asking why the person in front of him was swearing at him, since he was not guilty, to which the guy added, asking himself, then, is it his fault? The guy, continuing to play, began to shake his head and asked the man in front of him to do something with his body. A young man on the outside, but a grown man inside, put out a slightly trembling finger. With a worried expression mixed with insistence, the protagonist played out the blurry end of his line in case someone was eavesdropping and keeping an eye on what was going on around him. The man noticed the boy's entire brilliant performance, his subtle gestures, his gaze, his actions, which were more sweeping or more restrained with each spoken line, to which the jock noted how the guy was manipulating him, having only a script, without any preliminary preparation, and then continued his game of a tearful character who didn't know what to do. In response to the man in front of him, the guy responded in the spirit of his character that he himself did not know what to do. The guy continued his game, pretending that his character was thinking, looking at his helpless body in front of him. And then the main character, continuing to play, waved his hand and looked away. Gil Jun-ho, looking at the young man, thought that if this guy had decided to stand out, his acting would have already been buried. After a recent game, the The main character said how noise mixes with words, and that's what's missing here. Continuing to play, the young man told how he would give the signal for the meeting here. And so the game came to an end, and the actors fell silent and began to look at each other. The first person to start the conversation was a guy who thanked the adult for the game, citing the fact that it was fun. The man, looking at the main character, did not expect gratitude and such a reaction from the dark-haired man in front of him. Hearing the boy's recent words, Gil Junho realized that he should be the one thanking him. What kind of further work will be done with this child, the man thought, looking at the main character. To which the man, coming out of his thoughts, told the young man opposite how much he also liked it. The muscular man also shared that he will not forget today. After everything was over, Choi Jae-min approached the actor with some news, which was more than he expected. The man shared how shocked he was after what he had seen earlier, and added that he didn't even know what to say. Afterwards, the jock extended his hand to the main character, saying that now that they had seen the dark-haired guy's performance, they could discuss the contract in detail, and Gil Junho asked the guy if he had changed the second line on purpose. The main character answered the man's question with a smile and a positive answer. After the guy's answer, the man agreed with him, and added that he would have done the same in his place. And so the actors started talking about their common craft, to which the director tried to stop them. Suddenly the main character asked Gil Junho if he acts and plays. The man was surprised, not expecting such a question from the young man opposite. After some time, the second guest, the theater director Man-sik, entered the office. Entering, the bespectacled man saw a man sitting at the table, who was deep in thought. The man recognized this man. It was Gil Junho, he thought. Looking at the professional actor, the man remembered how he overheard what was happening in the office, which meant the kid was playing with him, Man-sik concluded. But the man wondered why the person in front of him was sitting with such a face. After considering all the options, the theater director assumed the worst outcome, that Gil Junho would be angry with the guy. The jock turned to the man opposite and asked if he ran the small theater, to which Man-sik answered in the affirmative. The man asked another question about how many performances were planned in the theater, to which the bespectacled man responded with a question about why he needed this information. Gil Junho replied that he wanted to perform on the stage of the man's theater. Hearing this, Man-sik was very shocked and wondered if Gil Junho wanted to act in his production. After considering such a strange offer for him, the theater director explained how it was quite radical. But, to be honest, he was not sure that he would be able to pay decently, the man concluded. After hearing the man's answer, Gil Junho smiled and said that money was not important to him. And after the jock opened his eyes, he looked at him with a confident gaze, and added that he was simply being greedy. Man-sik asked the man in front of him if he and the young man had come to an agreement. Gil Junho answered positively, and said that they had finished recently. After his answer, the muscular man asked curiously if the guy really worked in the theater, citing the fact that he did not believe that someone like him was a member of this troupe. The man added that he did not want to offend the theater director in any way. Hearing the words of the bodybuilder, Man-sik thought that he understood this feeling. Man-sik, coming out of his thoughts, began to tell the man opposite about the guy, starting with the fact that it was hard for him to call this the guy's work. After telling him that the main character is self-taught, and how he learned from books and scripts, Gil Junho was very surprised to learn this. The theater director continued to talk about the guy as being naturally gifted, while Gil Junho bit his finger. After hearing everything Man-sik knows about the main character, the man decided how he wants to work with the boy. Looking at the thoughtful man opposite, the theater director extended his hand to him. Gil Junho smiled as he saw the hand extended to him. Man-sik and Gil Junho ended up shaking hands with each other, thinking about working together. At this time, the main character was standing in the main corridor and looking at the film footage on the TV opposite. But suddenly, the director of NK Entertainment, Choi Jae-min, interrupted the boy from watching and said, "Here's the student." Looking at the main character, the director of NK Entertainment told him about how he would become part of the team, and how he would receive many opportunities along with it, that the guy would not find anywhere else. After listening to all the possibilities of joining the team, the main character responded with refusals. The director of NK Entertainment, having heard such an answer from the boy, on the contrary resigned himself, and added that he had never considered himself so upset. Choi Jae-min handed the main character an NK Entertainment business card, and said that if the guy needed help with his performances or changed his mind, he should contact them. Having moved to the Man-sik Theater, he prepared the stage for the performance of the new production. Looking at his work done, wiping the sweat from his forehead, the theater director beheld the newly prepared stage. Rubbing the area under Man-sik's nose with anticipation, he imagined how the genius boy and Gil Junho would perform on this stage. But suddenly a voice from behind interrupted the theater director's performances. It was a young man. He entered the hall and asked the man what he was doing. Having learned what the director of the theater was doing, the main character asked him why he was doing this, if the theater had plenty of workers. In response to the boy's words, Man-sik waved his hand and suggested that the boy go rehearse his lines and scenes. The man added that the main character needs to rest more and gain strength. Or better yet, have some fun, the man concluded. After listening to the director's proposals, the main character thought about them, watching the man descend the stairs. But the dark-haired man was distracted from his thoughts by director Man-sik, who asked him how he liked the stage. Looking at his recently completed work, the man asked the guy another question, whether he looked good, and he added that he wanted to do at least something for the guy's performances. Having heard the words of the theater director, the main character noticed how well the man had prepared the stage for the performance. Hearing the praise from the guy, Man-sik added that he only slightly improved the scene to fully immerse the audience. Having looked at the whole stage and the props for the performance, the main character was very surprised. The dark-haired man fell into thought about how he forgot about it. Because all this time the man only admired the things near Junwoo. The guy heard that he had studied theater arts and theater management for a long time. Looking at the delighted director, the main character thought about the man's efforts, and one can understand what his idea of the future performance was. The guy thought about it. And so the dark-haired man, after his thoughts, looking at the prepared scene, told the man that he liked it. Seeing the theater director and his creation in front of him, the guy decided that he would change the man's way of thinking about himself. Turning towards the main character, Man-sik told him that he was interested in something, and the guy became interested. After the main character's question, the man told him that no matter how much he thought about it, the man still could not understand why the guy refused NK if he wanted to perform with Gil Junho. The director added that the guy had been to NK and had seen a bunch of scripts there written by famous writers, so the young man could have played in more productions than in the theater. Scratching the back of his head, the theater director talked about how he would never understand the main character, and added that he was now very curious about it. After listening to the statements of the adult man opposite, the dark-haired man waved his hand and said that he did not remember. Hearing such a strange question, Man-sik stuttered and asked the guy if he was doing this for him, to which the boy pretended not to hear the man's question and headed towards the exit, asking the director if he wanted to eat. The man, seeing the evasion of the answer, looking at the back of the boy leaving, asked him why the boy hadn't answered. After some time, a man was peeping through the crack of the slightly opened door. It was Man-sik who was watching the conversation between the protagonist and Gil Junho. Seeing Gil Junho writing down the dark-haired man's words, the man wondered if the lead actor was interested in NK, or if he was obsessed with something. The theater director noted that if someone saw the conversation between these two actors, they would think that it was a scene from a play, and the man added that he generally thought that Gil Junho would only come on the day of the performance. A few days ago, the theater director, arriving early in the morning at the theater, walked down the corridor and heard a greeting directed at him. It was Gil Junho who rented a place to live near the theater so he could rehearse every day. After wishing him good morning, Man-sik, looking at the back of the departing man, noticed how Gil Junho came to the theater every morning before the theater director and never showed any signs of fatigue. Man-sik added to his observation that the actor enjoyed not so much the production as the opportunity to rehearse with the boy and discuss acting with him. Looking at Gil Junho, the theater director wondered why he didn't go home, to which the main character, coming closer to the director, whispered to him that he himself was not informed. At this time, while they were discussing Gil Junho, he himself was sitting on the sofa, staring at the floor, thinking about something. Man-sik asked the main character if he knew why the actor was always like this. To this question, the guy only latched onto the word, always. To which the theater director explained to the young man that Gil Junho always had such a concentrated look when he rehearsed with him, and the man added that he thought the actor would be cocky, but he turned out to be friendlier. Before the conversation between the main character and the theater director, an interested Gil Junho approached the boy holding a script in his hand, to which the main character answered his questions and explained the script to the man, and then left the happy Gil Junho. Returning to a more distant past, the dark-haired man explained to the actor NK that there was no point in continuing to speak like that. Even if the guy did as he interpreted, it would still not be the same. Looking at the surprised Gil Junho, the guy added that the man needs to figure it out on his own, the boy concluded. After such an explanation from the main character about the interpretation, the man was very delighted. Man-sik was watching this entire discussion between the main character and Gil Junho, peeping through the slightly open door. A week before the performance, preparations had reached the final stage. Sitting in his office chair, Man-sik thought of only one thing. There was one problem. A banner was created for the upcoming performance of a play called Socrates' Pursuer. The banner was almost completely done, but there was one problem. The role that the main character plays. Under it, it was necessary to place a photo of the guy and his name. Sitting at the computer and looking at the monitor, the theater director read the comments under the upcoming performance. The man noted that the reaction would not take long to come because of the photo of Gil Junho on the poster. Gil Junho, who had previously only chosen films based on the main director, will suddenly appear on stage, which is a hotly debated topic. But thanks to this, they forgot about the most important problem, Man-sik concluded. There was a week left before the performance, and he couldn't go on stage without introducing the entire cast, the theater director thought, seeing the door open in front of him. Walking down the corridor and opening it, the man entered the theater hall, wondering who could be here so late. And suddenly the theater director saw something on the stage prepared for the performance. On stage there was a main character who was lifting a prop, namely a cup. The main character, hearing a sound at the entrance to the hall, turned to the source of the sound. Seeing the surprised theater director descending to the stage, the main character asked him why the man was there. The man, not listening to the young man's question on the contrary, asked what was going on here. To which the young man responded with a question that the man didn't like. Hearing such a question from the young man opposite Mansik, he was surprised and answered, "Not at all, he really likes it." The man noted that being so small, he looked like a national. Reading all the books on theory was not in vain. There is nothing expensive here, so how is such an atmosphere created? Mansik wondered. But the main character interrupted your thoughts and told you how he had added something to what you had prepared. After the main character's words, the man thought them over carefully and looked at the stage again. There was a young man standing on the prepared stage, sweating heavily from cleaning. And the man saw before him not only a genius, but also a nice guy. Seeing the face of the main character Mansik, he asked him why he always hides his handsome face under his hair. The boy fell into thought. At these words of the man, the dark-haired man thought about them, because he had always hidden his face under his hair because of his previous job, and never thought about going out with it open. This performance will be on a completely different level compared to the last one, where there were less than 20 people. One way or another, this event will spread the news about the guy. The main character came to the conclusion. Standing on stage, Junwoo thought about how far he had come. Looking back, the guy was angry that he had been suppressing himself all this time. The boy remembered the words of the theater director about the man shouting that he would take care of the boy, and that he could do whatever he wanted from now on. The main character was very happy in his soul that he somehow received a second life, to which the man called out to the guy asking if he was sure he didn't mind, to which the main character replied with a smile on his face that he was not against it, and hoped not to create problems for the man. Hearing the dark-haired man's answer, Mansik wondered where the guy found out and added that sometimes he was scarier than a ghost. The theater director explained that if the guy wanted, there was a way to not reveal his identity, and gave an example, like a mysterious actor or something like that. Realizing what he said, Mansik began to think about why he said that. It wasn't worth it, and there was no point in it anymore. And so the theater director came out of his thoughts, and told the young man opposite that this made no sense. The man added that the boy might end up in the news, and excerpts from the interview would be distributed. To this, the main character responded with a serious expression that he didn't care, and that he'd rather do this than die. Having heard such an answer from the young man opposite Mansik, he asked if he was sure, to which the main character replied with confidence in his gaze, "Let's get started." The boy added how disappointed he would be if everything went to waste. After listening to the main character to the end, the theater director told him that he had nothing to worry about. Let him focus on the game, and he would take care of everything. From now on, the man will keep an eye on him so that nothing happens to the boy, because he plays in his theater, the theater director concluded. Having heard such a revelation from an adult, the main character smiled. After the conversation between the protagonist and the theater director, the poster for the upcoming performance at the theater was finally changed, showing Han Jun-woo in the leading roles. After some time, the long-awaited day of Han Jun-woo and Gil Jun-ho's joint performance on the same stage arrived, and a huge crowd of spectators gathered at the main entrance to the theater. Standing behind the screen on stage, Mansik peeked through the crack at the audience and watched their reactions, and the man himself could not wait for the joint performance of the young genius and the leading actor of NK Entertainment. The audience that came was already looking forward to Gil Jun-ho's first performance on stage, and many of the audience wondered how the theater owner was lucky enough to invite Gil Jun-ho. Mansik, standing behind the screen, continued to watch the audience, and he noticed how from every corner of the theater hall, the name Gil Jun-ho was mentioned, and even the theater director himself was anticipating his performance. Mansik himself thought about this NK Entertainment actor, and now that he sees the reaction of his audience in front of him, the man really began to understand that he is a famous actor. One of the couples in the audience noted how good the decorations were in this small theater. The girl noted that this is unusual for such theaters. The girl also said that when she entered, she had the feeling that she had entered a cave because of the light. It was gloomy. Mansik smiled when he heard the girl's words. At this time, all the main actors of the play were in the dressing room. Some were preparing to go on stage. Some were reading their lines in the script, getting ready to go out. But suddenly, the director of the theater burst into the dressing room and exclaimed that every person in the room should pay attention to him. He wanted to say something important. Hearing director Mansik's cry, the protagonist, tearing himself away from his preparation, turned to him to hear his words. Looking at Jun-woo, the theater director saw a character who seemed to have just come out of the stage and asked the boy if he was ready. It was time to go out. The prequel to the play that has just begun 10 years ago, Anton, a detective, lost his family and his leg to a man. And this began a long and brutal chase, in which the fugitive Pavel somehow mysteriously ends up. Gil Jun-ho plays Anton, who harbors anger in the depths of his soul, and Jun-woo takes on the wrong accusation. An endless pursuit, full of deception and surprises until the very end. The truth is unclear, and the key is the psyche of the characters. This is where the backstory ends, and the curtain begins to open in front of a full audience. Gil Jun-ho appears before the audience as a detective with a cane. Folding his hands on his cane, the man begins to act out his role with the question of where the fugitive is hiding. Having fully embraced his role, the detective walked along the edge of the stage, saying that it was time to end this story, and it began 10 years ago, and for some it was an eternity. But for me, it was just a moment. Gil Jun-ho finished. The audience, looking at the actor in front of them, began to discuss him, noticing how Gil Jun-ho's pronunciation was different, and saying how incredible he was. Other viewers started filming from their seats, saying that when will they be able to see Gil Jun-ho in person again, even though filming is prohibited, and viewers nearby are asking them to put away their cell phones. Returning to the actor on stage, he began a new line of his character, telling how the day had come when he was able to track down the fugitive. All the while Man-sik watched the play in amazement. The theater director, watching the performance, noticed how good Gil Jun-ho was and added with a surprised look that the actor in front of him was on a completely different level. Having seen and heard the last words of Detective Anton, the man noticed the end of Gil Jun-ho's monologue. And now, looking at the stage, he was waiting for something. The audience already thought that there was nothing more to see here after Gil Jun-ho came out. They were waiting for the end of the performance and were already planning to buy a new ticket for a repeat viewing. And then a new actor enters the scene. This is Jun-woo playing an adult who has been enjoying various eccentric murders for a long time. The guy begins to pronounce his words, heading towards the detective. Looking at the man in front of him, the killer addresses the man with words about how he turned him into a monster, and he is no different from him. The fugitive wonders if this is normal. It's hard for a 17-year-old to play this. His voice retains a youthful tone, but he complements it with his acting, pronouncing the word questioningly, right. The audience, watching the entire performance of the new actor who appeared, were very surprised and even believed that everything in front of them was real. Looking at the back of the standing Jun-woo, the theater director thought that after the lines started, no one in the theater saw the guy as a young man anymore. The audience held their breath. They couldn't take their eyes off Jun-woo standing in front of them. He had captured their hearts with his performance, even though he had appeared relatively recently. And then the climax happened. Detective Anton, pointing his finger, asks the man opposite if he really thought he could take everything, and told the killer that he could hide the evidence, but not himself. The actor, continuing to act out, shouts towards Jun-woo, "He has nothing else to do, stop pretending." To which the main character, clutching his head, answers the detective with a negative answer, and asks him how much more he has to repeat. And then the dark-haired man screams nervously, repeating the same phrase that it wasn't him. And then the main character takes on the face of a man who has killed more than once and enjoyed it. Seeing Jun-woo's performance, the theater director shudders and begins to tremble. After each line of the main character, a shudder runs through all the viewers, accompanied by a feeling of overwhelming presence. Gil Jun-ho's presence on stage, who was passionately performing on the left side of the stage, begins to fade from view. The audience, the backstage crew, and the NK staff, even Gil Jun-ho's manager are all mesmerized by Jun-woo. Everyone is speechless. And so the scene ends and the red screen closes in front of the audience, hiding the stage and everything happening behind it. The audience, not expecting the end and not having time to move away from the focus on the main character, are just beginning to move away from it. Finally, the stage with the actors standing on it opens before the audience. The audience stands up and begins to give a standing ovation, thus thanking them for the performance and the actors acting. After the performance, looking at the full audience in front of him, Gil Jun-ho thought about how he had always been proud of his acting skills and always treated the stage with awe and respect. But his pride in everything he had earned up to this point now feels a little shameful. Looking at the main character, the man noticed that all the viewers' eyes were directed at the guy standing next to him. After the recent performance of the main character and the main actor of NK Entertainment on the same stage in a small theater, there was a great deal of excitement around the theater. The entire media wrote about only one thing: the rise of a monstrous newcomer actor, a new legend of the theater, whom even Gil Jun-ho cannot outshine. At this time, the entire company, including Man-sik, Jun-woo, Gil Jun-ho, other actors, the backstage crew, and Gil Jun-ho's manager, went to a restaurant to celebrate after performing on stage. The theater director raised his glass and declared that everyone had tried hard, and the final performance had still taken place, and the man praised the manager. To which actor NK said that it would be impolite to cancel the only after-party. The manager, exhaling, asked Gil Jun-ho if it was polite to cancel the filming for a day. Actor NK added that a small postponement of the filming would not cause big problems. While listening to the conversation between Gil Jun-ho and his theater director-manager, something else caught my attention. The man looked at the main character, who was sitting, thinking about something. The man assumed that the boy did not like the meat. But suddenly the theater director was distracted from his thoughts by the ringing of his mobile phone in his pocket. Man-sik became very angry, thinking that if it was urgent, it was already too late. Stepping outside to find some peace and quiet, the man took out his phone and picked up the ringer. After some time, Man-Sik finished the phone call, exhaled, and thought about the offer to the main character to become an idol. The man was not satisfied with this, because they made a conclusion only based on appearance. But the director of the small theater was interrupted from his thoughts by a stranger's address. The stranger asked the man if he was Mr. Juman-Sik. The director looked questioningly. Out of breath, the stranger apologized and added that he found out where the after-party was and he didn't think he would arrive so late, to which Man-Sik asked the man who he was. In response to the man's question, the stranger wriggled and introduced himself as Yu Sung-jun from the production group W Broadcasting. Yu Sung-jun assured the theater director that he had an interesting proposal. Looking out the window of a nearby restaurant, W Broadcasting member noticed the man he had come for sitting at the table. At this time, Man-Sik held his face and thought about the words of the man standing opposite him. After thinking it over, the theater director asked the man opposite if he understood what was happening, and if he wanted to avoid ruining a good time with his proposal. Having heard the words of the theater director, the man asked him to listen to him, and he added that their group was producing a rather large-scale program. Man-Sik stood his ground and answered in the negative, not expecting this. Yu Sang-jun said that they were on a huge scale. Somewhere in one office, a rather grown man sat, looking at a stack of papers in his hand. Actors Kingdom at a Glance is where reality show actors audition to discover domestic and international talent. There are no restrictions for participants. Age, gender, nationality, experience, none of this matters. Anyone who loves acting is welcome. Before the show starts, the TV company holds a preliminary audition and the selected ones compete on the main air. The evaluation criterion is, of course, acting skills. The show is held in the form of rounds, and the winner, who survives the brutal competition, receives a huge prize and the main role in a film under the direction of a top Korean director. However, this is only on the surface. There are many people who can play. If everyone is good, then what fun is it? And so, having returned to the office of an unfamiliar mature man, we see how someone calls him. Noticing someone calling him, the man takes the phone in his hand and introduces himself as Park Jin-gil. But suddenly, Park Jin-gil jumps up from his chair, recognizing the chairman's voice, to which the man begins to assure him that there is no reason to worry. And he adds that he is doing this not for the first time, and that it is only called a reality show. But in reality, it is simply a drama being filmed. However, your son will be the winner and he will ensure it, assured Park Jin-gil. The man in the office continued to reassure the person on the phone, telling him how absolutely confident he was. After finishing the conversation, the man wished his interlocutor a good day, and this interlocutor was Kang-gu Nim, the chairman of the Dimyoung Group, a respected conglomerate with an annual revenue of tens of trillions of won. The budget for this project is 20 billion won, and he is the main investor, covering more than half. And the only son of Representative Kang Hyuk is the reason why this show even exists. It's all done to make him a superstar. Returning to Park Jin-gil, he thought about the project and how important it was for them to attract attention in the beginning. If we push too hard at the start, people will suspect that it is a setup and public opinion will turn negative. We need someone who will quickly attract attention and just as quickly fall off. Someone not very capable but passionate about this business would be too common. But the man was torn from his thoughts by a knock on the door. Yu Sung-jun entered the office with a small stack of papers and said that he brought a file, to which the leader sitting at the table asked his subordinate if he had found anything interesting, to which Yu Sung-jun replied that they were lucky with the timing. The leader asked a question. Luckily, the man handed the file to the person opposite. Taking the file in his hands, the man read the name of the person on the paper, Han Jun-woo. Looking at the information about the main character on paper, the man thoughtfully said that he had heard about him. It was the young man who persuaded Gil Jun-ho to perform on stage. The leader added that this young man definitely had talent, and the subordinate told the man opposite him that the theater community had heard a lot about the young man. Yu Sang-jun added that there was a video of the boy's performance, but the director waved his hand and said that there was no time for that, and that it would be better for him to tell his story. At this, the subordinate, with a grin, began to tell the story of his research about the main character. A simple village boy wants to play, an orphan with no background, can't even go to school. He comes to the theater every day with the sole desire to act, and he has also become close friends with director Ju Man-sik, and it is said that he sees Mr. Ju as a father. There is also a rumor that he even went straight to NK and persuaded Gil Jun-ho to watch his game. Can you imagine how furious and desperate the boy looked to give Gil Jun-ho a chance? The subordinate concluded his story with a question. After listening to the entire research of his protege, Park Jin-gil laughed. These days, kids with cute faces think they can achieve anything with little effort. But the audience is smarter now. That's why there's this crazy passion and innocence of this country boy. And his final collapse, faced with fierce competition in Seoul, could cause a storm of emotions among viewers, the leader concluded. The bailiff from his workplace, the man said to the man opposite. Even if he leaves earlier, the noise will rise due to sentimentality and stop already. He is coming. So make a contract with him. Waving his hand, the leader finished. After hearing such an opinion from the person in front of him, Yu Sung-jun was very surprised and even wanted to object. He believed that the boy might have some acting talent, But he was no match for Kang Hyuk, who had trained at the Justin School of Acting in New York's International Theater Academy, with experience playing on stage under the guidance of Broadway and Hollywood masters. But clutching his head and looking down, the subordinate agreed with his leader. Yoo Sung-joon added, "This guy will probably attract attention at the beginning, but he is not on the same level as Kang Hyuk," to which Park Jin-gil responded to his subordinate, "It's obvious." The manager finished speaking, considering his face and the hype. "You yourself understand that the agencies will revolve around him, so if the ward does not want to lose 20 billion, let him move." And Park Jin-gil sent the man in front of him with the words that if he does not get his signature back, he should not come back. Back to the present moment, the conversation between Man-sik and Yoo Sang-joon continues. The man opposite the director continued to beg him, telling him how all citizens would watch this TV show. Looking at Man-sik in front of him, Yoo Sang-joon asked him if he was the one who wanted the boy to succeed the most. As the man listened to him, the director of the small theater thought about how the man in front of him was provoking him, and guessed that, judging by what he heard, he wanted to warm up the audience with the help of Jun-woo. Man-sik doesn't care that Jun-woo is being used. If they show even one scene of him acting, everything they planned will turn into a disaster. Seeing the face of the theater director, something must have worried him, and it was real. Man-sik asked Yoo Sung-joon who else would be on this TV show besides Jun-woo. The director added that he wanted to hear who it was and the full text of the contract, to which the man in front of Man-sik hesitated, laughed nervously, and said that nothing had been approved yet. Yoo Sung-joon covered half of his face with his hand, and thought about how he didn't even suspect that some director was aware of the broadcast. Man-sik fell into thought as he looked at the man in front of him. If he had just participated in the filming, there wouldn't have been any problems. But due to the nature of the audition programs, everything will revolve around idols with a large fan base or rookie actors from major entertainment agencies. Even if just one scene with Jun-woo were to air, the effect would be beyond imagination, Man-sik thought. They hold the key to the editing. They may have other reasons for hiding Jun-woo's skills. If that happens, the show and everything else may go down the drain. Despite this, all the people watching Jun-woo's performance will be delighted. It's quite exciting, the director said with anticipation. But wait, the man missed one point. Will the guy even want to get involved in this? Looking through the window of Man-sik's restaurant, he saw the main character sitting at the table and wondered if he would be interested. After all, the dark-haired man's approach to acting was initially different from the others. The theater director introduced Jun-woo to ordinary actors or young children striving for popularity. The man fell into deep thought, wondering what to do, and the main character watched all this. Seeing how the man approached Man-sik, the protagonist immediately determined from the director's reaction that they were discussing him. The main character, looking at the people outside the window, fell into thoughts about the actor's kingdom, whether it still exists, and the guy remembered that this reality show was quite large-scale and even aroused international interest, and in the end, the winner was the son of some rich family. Finally, after the conversation ended, the man went back to the restaurant, but the main character was waiting for him there, who immediately asked whether the director had sent the man away or not. The man was surprised and asked the guy if he was watching them. The dark-haired guy did not answer the question, but only apologized for causing problems. The theater director added that he did not know that he was the guy's manager, and asked him if he knew what he had talked about with that man. Chief Man-sik wondered why he was asking if the boy probably already knew. The man was very surprised to see how the guy's eyes lit up with interest. The main character brought the man out of his thoughts by saying that he wanted to do it. Jun-woo lowered his head and added that he was very curious and wanted to try it. And at that time, he was wondering in his head whether he had changed, whether everything was different now. The protagonist asked the man opposite if he wanted to stop him, to which Man-sik was very surprised. The man told the dark-haired man that if he wanted it that way, then Man-sik, of course, would not stop him. The main character asked the man if he knew how much the prize was on this reality show. The theater director answered that the prize was 1 million, as he thought, and the man asked the guy why he needed this information. When asked, the main character replied that if he won the prize, he would give the money to the man. But the manager objected, asking why he should do that, to which the dark-haired man said that he knew what Man-sik had gone through while preparing for the performance. The venue was small for such a number of people, and it was not something that could be handled alone, the guy said. Hearing the main character, the man grabbed the back of his head and thought that he knew everything, but tried not to show it. The main character, seeing the thoughtful man in front of him, told him that he was not going to run the theater here to raise someone of the guy's caliber, and suggested that the man move. Man-sik told the boy that no matter how well he acted, if the production guys cheated, they wouldn't let him air a single scene. Seeing the serious director in front of him, the main character said frivolously that he didn't care. The man asked the dark-haired man what had come over him, whether he wanted to win or something else. At these words, the main character remembered moments from his past life, how around the same years he, watching TV, admired Gil Jun-ho. But the boy didn't share his thoughts, but only said with a grin to Man-siku that he thought it would be fun. Seeing the face of the main character, the man thought that he was serious, but entertainment among aspiring actors risking their lives in the competition. Competing or attacking someone to rise to the top does not suit him very well, Man-sik concluded, looking at Jen Woo. The theater director told the guy that he didn't have to do as they wanted, and added that, to be honest, he didn't have to worry about their dirty tricks, and since there were no restrictions on participants, if the guy really wanted to, he could participate. The protagonist interrupted the man with a question. Do they just want to use him? And will there be any benefit if he obeys their will? Hearing such a question from the young man in front of him, the man was surprised, and the dark-haired man asked again if there would be any benefit, to which the man replied that there would not be any. The guy added, "Then we will do it this way," and director Man-sik exclaimed, "Why does the guy allow himself to become bait, as the leaders of this reality show want?" The protagonist replied that it sounded appropriate to him, since he was good at it, and asked with a grin if it mattered how you started. And finally the day came when the selection for the reality show Actors Kingdom began. Many people wanted to take part in this show in order to become famous. The people who came tried to calm themselves down. They were very worried about their audition. But among all this frightened crowd, there was a main character who was not worried about anything. Jun-woo's eyes fell on an interesting scene of a man with a beard comforting his protege who came to the audition. The main character, seeing his surroundings, noticed how everyone was worried and busy except him. To quickly select a large number of candidates, preliminary selection is carried out by improvisation. How is the audition conducted? 2 random keywords are given and spoken on the spot: role and situation. Candidates must play the assigned role within a minute, such as an artist who has failed. Confession. When the keywords are spoken, they must quickly think of a scene with the appropriate character and situation. Understanding, depth, and versatility, the main skills in acting. The difficulty is quite high, as it is necessary to thin out the number of participants before the main competition. The main character, walking down the corridor, met Yoo Sang-joon, who greeted the guy and praised him for coming. One of the people sitting at the table shared with the others that there were plans to record an interview today, as well as a video of the preliminary judging of some carefully selected participants. Displaying a photo of Jun-woo on the screen, the man stated that this was the candidate they needed to focus on first. This child, once the first episode ended, the promotion team would start working with various communities before Kang Hyuk officially appeared. Opening the door to the office, Yoo Sung-joon entered, looking at the people sitting at the table. The red-haired man came in and introduced the main character, pointing at him with his hand, to which the people in front of the main character greeted Jun-woo and added that they had been waiting for him for a long time. One of the people told the dark-haired man about how famous the guy had become and asked for an autograph. But among all these people, 2 people looked very closely at the boy. Yoo Sung-joon hugged the main character and tried to calm him down with words that everything would be fine. After listening to the red-haired man, the boy abruptly moved away from the man and headed towards the table with his hands in his pockets. Having sat down at the table with the people and putting one hand on the table, the main character declared that he had relaxed a long time ago. Yoo Sung-joon, not expecting such actions from the guy, noted that it was unexpected for him. Among all these people at the table was Park Jin-gil, who grinned and looked at the dark-haired man. The man, looking at the guy, thought that this naive village boy, in addition to his appearance, also had an aura. The leader already imagined how everything would go well, and this kid would attract a lot of attention. Looking at the TV in front of the table, the main character glanced at the red-haired man sitting next to him. Seeing the way the guy looked at him, Yoo Sung-joon wondered why the guy looked at him like that. Seeing a slide with the main character on TV, the man stood up from the table and angrily ordered the man opposite to change the slide right now. After his scream, Yoo Sung-joon looked at the main character's reaction. The man began to justify himself by saying that before Jun-woo arrived, they discussed how to most effectively demonstrate his skills on TV. After listening to the red-haired man's excuse, the main character, looking at the man standing next to him, asked him why he was standing like that, to which Yoo Sung-joon, not expecting such a question, thought that if he presented himself correctly, he could continue to appear in broadcasts even with poorly developed skills. At auditions, the winner is sometimes determined based on the tastes of those in power, so it is natural that people try their best to create a good impression. At least the man expected such innocent behavior. But this guy, he's completely different, the red-haired man concluded. But Jun-woo continued asking questions. If people wanted to go ahead with the plan, then why were they so slow? So what should he do? Asked the main character. After listening to the last question, the men began to think about it. Park Jin-gil thought about how good it felt. But it was still different from the expected picture. Knowing this, the man would have broken the guy's spirit from the very beginning. Maybe he could pacify him, the leader thought. But after thinking it over, the adult exhaled and said, "In general, the less experience you have, the easier it is to achieve something." Looking at the boy, the man assumed from his reaction that he didn't understand, because he spoke too distantly. To which Park Jin-gil rephrases his words, telling the dark-haired man that even famous idols come hoping to leave their mark. Listening to the man, the dark-haired man considered him boring. But suddenly the main character heard another wiretapping behind the wall. Pointing in the direction from where he heard the kid asked if he could watch. Hearing the request of the main character Park Jin-gil, he was not expecting this and was very surprised. The leader became angry and reminded the boy that he had an important conversation with Jun-woo. When the man reminded him, the dark-haired man said, puzzled, that he didn't know. The boy added that he thought Park Jin-gil was talking about nonsense while the member was just sitting there. Having calmed himself down, the leader decided to get straight to the point and suggested that everyone move on to the essay that the man had prepared for Jun-woo. The leader began the story. Jun-woo, who was passionate about acting, went to the theater every day until one day CEO Ju kicked him out. But the main character did not give up, and after many attempts he was able to get into the theater. The general director Ju barely managed to save the failed theater with the help of the appearance and unexpected abilities of Jun-woo. To which the dark-haired man interrupted, saying that he had never been kicked out. Park Jin-gil, clutching his head, explained how it was not necessary to tell the pure truth. Jun-woo asked the man if this wasn't a program about auditioning actors. The leader replied that it was, but people wanted to see more than just acting. After listening to the man next to him, the main character, angry, replied that he came here to play. Having heard the answer from the main character that he came here to play, people were very surprised. Park Jin-gil also didn't expect such an answer from the young man opposite him. Seeing the reactions of the people nearby, Jun-woo said that it was as if he was being told to cheat instead of playing. After listening to the comparison of the main character, Park Jin-gil got angry and agreed with him and apologized to the boy. Looking at the dark-haired man, the man told the boy that in any case, someone of the same caliber as Jun-woo wouldn't fail the selection, so just play the role he was going to. Seeing the face of the young man in front of him, Park Jin-gil wondered why this guy was looking at him like that without blinking. But suddenly, the leader caught his eye on something near the main character. The man noted that the guy who was going to take part in the preliminary selection did not take a single script with him, to which the man suggested out loud that he expected it to be so, because the kid had shared the stage with Gil Jun-ho for a reason. He had already simply remembered everything, so he had no need to peek anywhere. Jun-woo, not expecting such a suggestion, latched onto the man's words. But the man ignored the main character, and told how people usually bring several scenarios just in case, but experienced participants just take everything from their heads. The guy, after listening to Park Jin-gil, explained that he came because he heard that they were conducting an improvisation test, to which the man asked the guy, that is, he wants to say that he did not prepare anything, since he did not know what would happen. And to this question from the man in front of him, the guy answered positively. Having heard the positive answer from the main character, I assumed that the guy has limited thinking, or that he doesn't know much because he never studied. The leader suggested this based on the fact that he knows how people carefully prepare for an impromptu scene by going through various scenarios, and Park Jin-gil suggested another option, an option in which the guy is in despair. Human emotions are limited. The same with roles. Usually when given similar situations, people prepare themselves to immediately give out suitable lines. All technique lies in such reflexes, Park Jin-gil stated confidently. Looking at the protagonist, the leader finally concluded his explanation by saying that this is how the skill of improvisational play is developed. But Park Jin-gil did not expect one of the main characters to be unsatisfied with such an explanation. And the guy asked him what about the capital, the man asked what about the rest. Jun-woo rephrases the question for the surprised Park Jin-gil. Other than emotions, roles, situations, does the program have any separate specific area? Looking at the very surprised man, the dark-haired man did not stop wondering if this sphere existed, and the main character said that he wanted to know about it. After listening to the boy, Park Jin-gil laughed, apologizing. He told the boy that due to the boy's little experience, he had problems with understanding. Afterwards, the man suggested that the main character give it his all now. The leader, looking at the boy opposite, thought about him, thinking how the dark-haired man had absolutely terrible skills. The man wondered what Gil Jun-ho saw that made him want to perform on the same stage with this boy. Park Jin-gil suggested that actor Gil Jun-ho liked Jun-woo's face or atmosphere. After the main character's audition was over, 2 people remained in the office. The leader was pulled out of his thoughts by the words of the man sitting next to him, who spoke about how interesting the boy was, and wondered whether it would be a waste to use him like that. Adjusting his glasses, the man added how he liked his face, his appearance, his story. Such children are interesting to tame, the man in glasses said. To which Park Jin-gil stated how the boy was not like today's children. The man in glasses asked the man sitting next to him not to make the boy unpleasant. The man in glasses added that the image of the boy should not be overloaded, but simply filmed rather pitifully. Park Jin-gil, looking at the man in glasses, said that he was already honoring the pressure of the boss, although filming had not yet begun. In response to Park Jin-gil's words, the boss reminded him that he was not talking in vain. Not expecting such a reminder from the boss, the man remembered that the boss was not the kind of person who would behave like this at any time in order to be greedy. The man in glasses said, models, unknown actors, ordinary people, if they caught his eye, they always have a way. Park Jin-gil heard the boss's words and told him that it was expected, that for a company of this level even singing was a bonus skill. The man with glasses shared that he didn't think so. Looking at him, You could tell that he wanted something simple, the boss added, saying that something was falling rather not on qualified strangers, but on children who were in demand by the public, to which Park Jin-gil assured that he would promote the boy appropriately. Looking at the man sitting next to him, Park Jin-gil reminded his boss about the previous conversation, to which the boss agreed with him, saying that they would do so. Returning to the main character, he had already been in the corridor for a long time after his audition. Junwoo walked past the bustling crowd of people waiting for their audition number. One of these people were two guys who, upon seeing the main character, stopped preparing, looking at Junwoo. One of the guys wondered where he had seen him. Seeing the back of the main character walking in front of him, the other guy remembered this guy and reminded his friend that this was the guy who was on the same stage with Gil Jun-ho. Feeling the throne's gaze on him, the dark-haired man turned back sharply, but there he only saw two scared guys preparing for their audition. The protagonist turned his gaze towards the door of one of the listening rooms and was attracted by the crying coming from that room. The main character, leaving the office that attracted him, thought that this was real crying and assumed that the person probably did not pass. But suddenly, while walking down the corridor, the main character caught something lying on the floor. It was someone's script with notes to prepare for an audition. Seeing the script on the floor, the protagonist looked around to see if the owner was nearby, but all that Junwoo saw around him were people holding their scripts in their hands. Seeing everyone learning and repeating all the scripts, Junwoo thought that he was really the only one who came with nothing. Having picked up the stranger's script, the protagonist sat down with him in the corridor. Junwoo was very curious and started reading by flipping through the script. Holding the script in his hands with one of the pages open, the dark-haired man saw the notes of the script's owner. After looking through the script and looking at one of Junwoo's notes, he noticed that he had never thought of such a thing. Suddenly, some girl saw the main character sitting reading the script, and then the dark-haired man was called out by a girl who had come up to a short distance. "Who is he?" the girl asked, and then stated that the script the guy was holding was hers. Looking at the frivolous protagonist, the girl asked him why he was rehearsing using her script. The girl abruptly snatched her script while the dark-haired man began to make excuses, saying that he found it on the floor, thinking that someone had dropped it. To which the girl exclaimed, asking the main character if he knew her academy and could imagine how much even one script costs, and he reads it for free. The dark-haired man, very surprised, said that he hadn't rehearsed, and the girl didn't believe him. The young man added, apologizing, that he had drawn a little in the script. Having heard about how the girls also drew in the script, the girl got angry and asked again if the guy knew how much he cost. After listening to the girl in front of him, the main character asked her how much the script cost and offered to pay her for it, to which the girl refused and exclaimed that she no longer wanted to see the guy's face. And later, angry, but having found the script, she disappeared around the corner of the corridor, leaving the guy at a loss. The dark-haired man, not expecting such a reaction from the girl, thought that there was nothing he could do about it. Sitting down on the nearest sofa away from the main character, the girl decided to take a look at what the guy had drawn in her script. Turning the pages, the girl saw many notes from the main character, and having read them carefully, the green-eyed girl was very surprised by them. Reading each note the main character wrote recently, the girl tried to understand them. There she saw how each line of dialogue was accompanied by notes on stage actions, such as a thud, a stamp of the foot, a tense gulp, a slap of the hand on the table, a click of the pen. Instead of a voice, emotions can be conveyed by sounds, rapid eye movements, gradually accelerating gestures, finger pointing, silent opening of the mouth. He even wrote down the exact time for each action. He rewrote all the phrases so that the voice was not used, and somehow made it even better than it was, the green-eyed girl thought. After reading everything, the girl asked herself a lot of questions about why the guy did this. He didn't lose his voice like she did. The guy did it for fun. It couldn't be that this was such a joke. Everyone else was tense because there was so little time left for rehearsal, so they were trying to repeat everything again. So why did he do it now, at such a time? The girl wondered, looking at the people around her. At this time, the main character was sitting stretched out on the sofa and thinking about how bored he was, and that there was nothing to do here. But the green-eyed girl was heading towards the dark-haired man who was sitting and breathing heavily, reading the notes in the script. And so the girl called out to the main character, thus drawing him out of his boredom. The green-eyed girl stood in front of Junwoo, opened the script and asked him how he did all this. Standing in front of the main character, the girl tried to question him, asking many questions. Not expecting such persistence, the dark-haired man asked the girl what exactly she wanted from him. To which the girl, embarrassed, asked the main character if she could use the guy's notes for her audition. Hearing such a question, the dark-haired man was surprised and did not understand what they wanted from him. But after some time, the boy thought about the question and realized what they wanted from him. He asked the girl what she was following him for. The green-eyed girl agreed and asked again if she could use them. To this, the main character replied that there was no need to ask him. It was her script. She said it herself, the guy reminded, looking at the girl. Having heard such an answer from the young man, the green-eyed girl thought about why the guy, having tried so hard, could so easily give away the script. The students at the academy are trying their best to gain even the slightest advantage for the sake of a small benefit. For the sake of a single brilliant idea, they are ready to tear each other's throats out. The girl thought about this, looking at the main character sitting opposite her. This guy, he's an angel, the girl thought to the dark-haired man, imagining him as an angel. Seeing the reaction of the girl in front of him, the main character did not understand what she was doing. Opening the door with a camera in his hand, Yu Sung-jun called out to member 234 Kim Yoo-jin. The red-haired man, entering one of the audition rooms, saw a picture of people sitting in front of a girl, asking her if she was from the Star Factory. The girl who had just been talking to the guy was now standing at her audition, telling him that today she would be showing off her acting skills in a slightly different way than the other contestants. After listening to the green-eyed woman, the man thought that she would be able to play with such a hoarse voice, and the woman suggested that she start. Standing with the camera, Yu Sang-jun saw that the judges did not look very interested. The man thought that all they needed from him was a short filming for the episode about what was happening behind the scenes. And so Kim Yoo-jin's audition began. The people sitting at the table were shocked by what they saw. They wondered how she managed to achieve such a level of attention to detail. One man remembered being told about the Star Factory's intensive training and wondered how good it was. After the girl finished, the man in the cap was very surprised by such a performance. Kim Yoo-jin finished looking at the people in front of her and wondered why they had become quiet. She shouldn't have played without lines. And then the silence was broken by a man in a cap, asking the girl how she came up with the idea to do something like this. "You don't seem to have much experience. That's what people call a genius," concluded the man in the cap looking at the green-eyed girl. Kim Yoo-jin, not expecting to be called a genius after she thought of the worst option of all, was very surprised. And bending down and thanking in a hoarse voice, the girl's listening ended. Park Jin-gil watched the performance filmed on camera and asked a person standing next to him if it was Han Jun-woo who pulled it off. Yu Sung-jun responded positively and added that they checked the interview, to which the red-haired man remembered how he questioned the girl who told him everything, how the guy found her script, and how she discovered notes left by him in the script. The ward said that he personally saw the main character's scribbles and understood what they meant. After listening, the leader said that he was shocked how a genius appeared in this village, to which Park Jin-gil suggested that the boy was influenced by Gil Jun-ho. Jumping up from the table, the leader asked Yu Sung-jun where they were now. The red-haired one asked who exactly he was talking about. After some time, while in some establishment, people from the team for the main selection were talking. Blue-eyed, sitting at the bar, reminded his colleagues that today was the preliminary selection, and added that the winner would take part in director Gu's new film. The red-haired man waved it off and added that in order to attract attention, it was enough to just name the winner of this show. The man in the brown t-shirt sitting next to him said, "This is cruel, Mr. Chun-myung," and asked the blue-eyed man if he had ever had a failure even outside of this show. But the friend was interrupted from his conversation by the sound of the door opening into the establishment. The team, seeing the man who came to them, greeted their leader. It was Park Jin-gil who came to his friends to take a break from work. Sitting down at the table with his friends, the leader said that he had a really strange performance today. The man in the brown t-shirt asked again, "Strange?" To which Park Jin-gil added that they were keeping him around because he had potential in acting. But at the moment the man met him, he couldn't say that the guy was normal, the leader said, and then added, "Even the CEO, Lee Jae-won, showed interest. It seemed he had corrected another contestant's script," the leader said, and handed the script to the man with glasses. Taking the script in his hands, the man opened it and began to read it intently. After reading this, the man with glasses was very surprised, and asked what the boy had been doing before he came here. Park Jin-gil replied that the boy was a simpleton from the countryside, and the leader suggested that the boy learned acting mostly from Gil Jun-ho. The man with glasses was even more surprised when he heard the name of the actor N.K. Chung-myung, having heard about the boy, said that he was interesting, but it was planned that he would only appear in the early episodes and then disappear, having received fleeting fame. The man with glasses continued to read Jun-woo's notes in the script, still surprised. The man noted that the guy was good at acting, but he was also teaching him, the man concluded. Returning to the main character, he was waiting for his number for the real audition. Sitting in the office, people began to discuss the next person, namely Jun-woo, as they were told this guy should play a big role in the first episodes. And then the main character entered the audition room, for whom this was his second audition. Entering and standing in front of the people, all the dark-haired man's thoughts were occupied with the fact that he wanted to eat, and the main character was curious whether the old man had already eaten. The man sitting in the cap told his colleagues that they had a new order from the leader, namely to give this boy the most difficult role. Suddenly, the man in the blue cap was attracted by something while looking at the paper about the main character. Jun-woo's entire resume was empty, although the man saw an article about the boy performing on the same stage with Gil Jun-ho. The man in the cap thought that if the guy didn't want to use the actor's name, then he could be respected for that. After his thoughts, the man asked the boy if he had any other experience or achievements that he hadn't put on his resume. To the question of the adult man in front of him, the main character answered negatively with a serious face. Not expecting such an answer from the boy, the man in the blue cap was very surprised. The man himself thought that the guy specifically did not want to mention information about himself. And the man decided to ask the dark-haired man directly whether the guy stood on the same stage with Gil Junho. After such a question, Junwoo looked at him questioningly. And the guy with a serious expression asked a question. Performing on the same stage with someone is considered an achievement. The man in the cap was very surprised by such an answer to his question. He could not have expected it. The man thought that technically the boy was right, but it didn't make sense here. He acts like he's on the same level as someone as great as Gil Junho, but judging from his expression, he genuinely doesn't understand what's going on. It seemed that the leader Pak didn't just say his name for no reason. There must be something in him, the man concluded. Finally, having come to his senses, the man in the cap suggested that the main character begin. After some time, moving to the office of Dabalu Broadcasting, their manager Yu Sung-jun was greeted by Park Jin-gil, who asked how the young man Han Jun-woo was. The man, predicting the defeat of the main character, asked the man opposite if Jun-woo was angry after he was given the most difficult role, to which the red-haired man said that he himself had not seen the filming, and they had not even sent him the raw material. But one of the judges said something interesting. After hearing Yu Sang-jun, the man asked the manager to tell him what one of the judges said. Yu Sang-jun began to explain how he didn't quite understand, but the judge said that he had never seen anything like it in his life. After the audition was over, the main character and the theater director decided to go out to eat. Man-sik asked the guy how it went for him, to which the guy told how he almost died while waiting for his audition, and added that his uncle could have warned him. Surprised by the dark-haired man's accusation, the theater director began to justify himself by saying that he himself had never been to a single audition. And the man also asked the boy how he found the atmosphere. The answer of the main character, Man-sik, shocked him. The guy said that he didn't know that there were so many people like him. Reflecting on the recent past, Jun-woo shared with the man opposite him that he had learned a lot. Man-sik himself thought about how he was afraid that the kid would lose interest when he saw the huge difference in skills. It seemed like it wasn't a problem at all, the man concluded. And finally, the long-awaited opening day of the Actors' Kingdom has arrived, and the host of this reality show, So Yeon-mi, greeted everyone. And the woman began by telling how everyone was eager to hear what the first official stage would be like. For actors, the first serious test is the skill of holding the audience's attention. After the introduction, host So Yeon-mi raised her hand and announced the start of the first stage. Standing with a microphone in front of a large number of people, the host addressed them with the words that she was sure that everyone had seen the film Island of the Dark Spirit at least once. And he was removed from our esteemed jury members, director Koo Dae-myung, the host added, introducing the man. Completely unrelated strangers of different ages, genders, and backgrounds find themselves together on a desert island, where an accident leaves them isolated and dangerous situations arise as they uncover hidden truths. The storytelling is flawlessly crafted from start to finish, coupled with masterful acting, and as a result, the film won almost every major award this year, including the Baeksan Award for Best Picture of the Year and the Best Actor Award. And it wasn't just the acting, directing, and filming. Like the music, every element contributed to the history of cinema, said host So Yeon-mi. The first task for the participants will be to play a role that they themselves choose, based on the fact that it is the most important one in the film in their opinion. There are no restrictions other than the given topic. While maintaining the main story of the character, the participants are free to interpret his personality and speech, concluded host So Yeon-mi. Seeing the reaction of the public, Yu Sang-jun noted that everything was going well, which meant that according to the plan, it was necessary to maintain the atmosphere, the man thought. After his thoughts, the red-haired man waved his hand and called the presenter so that she would pay attention to him. Seeing that a woman had noticed him, the man shouted out a request for So Yeon-mi to warm up the hall, to which the woman, drawing the attention of the public, said that before the start of the first task, she wanted to know what the participants' motivation was for the Actors' Kingdom. One of the jury members answered this question by telling people how when they were going through the resumes, they came across participants with unique stories. And one of these is the participant, Han Jun-woo. After which the blue-eyed man asked the audience if he was among them. After the question, the main character was immediately found among the crowd of people. The guy did not expect that they would start with him. The judge reminded everyone about the incredible performance of the boy with Gil Junho, filmed on video, but it was still amazing. Chun Myung, after his reminder, asked the boy how he managed to convey the madness of the killer so accurately at his young age. The main character responded to the question with a request that the jury member indicate which scene conveyed his madness. After such an answer, the blue-eyed man was surprised. But Jun-woo didn't stop at revealing that his character's identity was not revealed until the very end. Hearing the remark from the main character, the man wanted to get out of it. Chun Myung apologized, justifying himself by saying that he probably just made a mistake. In his thoughts, the blue-eyed man got angry and thought of only one thing: how an ordinary village simpleton, who had been playing for more than 20 years, was pointing out a mistake. The man wondered if the boy should be embarrassed and confused by the compliment, or say that he intended to do even better. Was this the reaction the man was expecting? Chong Myung wondered. At this rate, he would look like a veteran who didn't understand the script as well as the contestant, the jury member suggested. And he decided to get out of this situation by saying that the man had heard that Junwoo had worked on a construction site since he was a child. In response to Chon Myung's words, the protagonist confirmed that it was true that he worked at a construction site. After confirming his words, the blue-eyed man asked whether it must have been difficult to be young and try to earn money through physical labor without parents. To which the guy said that it was indeed physical labor, but the rent was small, so he managed to avoid problems. Not expecting such an answer from the young man, Chon Myung latched onto the word rent and thought that the guy had such a view on the situation. The man continued to question the main character, asking that it was probably hard for the guy to be alone, working without friends his age, and that before participating in Actor's Kingdom, the boy did not want to visit Seoul. The main character, hearing the question from the blue-eyed man, answered that he did not want to visit Seoul because he likes the silence and clean air in the village. Chung Myung, after listening to Junwoo, noted that his answers were quite polite. But if you ask such questions, many people will start to remember their past and react accordingly, or at least talk about how difficult their life was in order to gain compassion, which is usually what happens. After some time of asking Junwoo many questions, the blue-eyed man folded his arms and thought that no matter how much he asked, he still couldn't get the desired reaction. Now he didn't want to ask questions at all. Returning to the moment when preparations for the reality show Actor's Kingdom were just beginning, men sitting on the couch were taking out the roles that the participants wanted to play from a glass cube. Chun Myung, after going through the first 5 sheets of paper, determined that the most popular role among the participants was Baek Do-hyun, based on the fact that they had already come across 3 sheets of paper with this role. Taking out the next role, the blue-eyed man laughed and said that someone had chosen the role of Bae Do-hyun again, to which the man sitting next to him said that the star of the film was Tae Sang-min. Taking the next piece of paper in his hands, Chon Myung said that finally someone had chosen a really small role. The director of the film was very surprised, having caught on to the red-haired man's words. The blue-eyed man added that the man chose a minor role with little screen time. Judging by the fact that he remembers his name, it is not just to attract attention, the man said. Koo Dae-myung abruptly snatched the piece of paper with the role from the person sitting next to him, who was telling him something that he was very curious about. When the director saw a minor role for the film Dark Spirit Island on the piece of paper, he was very surprised. Because Kang Hyuk wrote Lee Min-jun's role on the piece of paper, few people know that this minor character is actually important. Seeing who chose the role of Koo Dae-myung made me think about how he heard that Kang Hyuk had studied and trained professionally overseas since he was a child. But suddenly the director was torn away from his thoughts by Yoo Sang-jun's incomprehension. Turning around, the man asked the blue-eyed man what had surprised him so much. The red-haired man shared that he was hearing the name of this character for the first time from the director's film, and the director asked what the name was. When the director saw the character's name for the first time, he assumed that the person who chose the role had mixed something up. Back in the present, the reality show has entered its first test, where one of the participants has already performed well. Having already watched several performances, the blue-eyed man noted that, as he thought, the most popular options were the roles of Baek Do-hyun and Ta Sang-min, to which the film director sitting next to him explained that these roles were the most striking. Chun Myung added that the overall level of the candidates was higher than they had expected, and after listening to the red-haired Koo Dae-myung, he agreed, and stated that if someone had done a different interpretation of the character, it could have been even more impressive. After listening to what the director of the film Chung Myung thought, looking at the man with glasses, he asked him what he thought. Sunbae responded to the red-haired man's question by asking the opposite question, whether the man was moved by the passion and energy of the members. Chon Myung, hearing the person sitting next to him, responded that he had already felt this newbie spirit, and noted that among all the judges, Sunbae was the harshest critic. The red-haired man himself, taking out a new piece of paper with a roll, thought about why he should worry if he knows that the winner is in the end. After reading the name of the new member and the role he had chosen on the piece of paper, Chun Myung thought that a black horse was coming onto the stage. Coming onto the stage and standing in front of the judges, contestant number 11 greeted them and introduced himself as Kang Hyuk. After the introduction of the contestant, the red-haired man noticed how the guy chose a secondary role and praised him for this unique decision. After Chun Myung's words, Koo Dae-myung took the microphone and asked the guy on stage why he chose this role. Kang Hyuk listened to the man's question and answered him. Lee Min-jun is a shy, insecure character who isolates himself from others and just trembles in the corner. The boy believes that he is acting as an objective observer, able to watch the events and emotional changes from the outside as the main drama unfolds. But it is because of this that Kang Hyuk believes that he was the only character who could objectively evaluate the development of events and the emotional changes between the main characters from the beginning to the end. In other words, since he is a character that the viewers identify with, Lee Min-jun's reactions and views evoke an emotional response from them. While watching the film, viewers get the feeling that they are directly following the characters in the story, I am sure that director Koo Dae-myung was trying to achieve exactly this effect. Kang Hyuk finished clowning around. Looking at the director, Chung Myung noted that, judging by the director's reaction, this was truly a rare shot. After finishing the conversation between contestant number 11 and the jury member, the red-haired man suggested starting the performance. A second after preparing, Kang Hyuk's expression changed dramatically. Having gotten into character, his whole body began to tremble. His gaze began to dart. Each change in his gaze conveys subtle emotional fluctuations. Without dialogue, it is clear what to focus on in this scene. After the performance ended, the jury members began to discuss it heatedly. Chun Myung declared that the winner had already been determined, and director Koo should not worry anymore. Having seen the 11th participant off the stage, the blue-eyed man reached out to watch the next participant of this reality show. Chun Myung was very surprised when he saw who would be next and what role they would play. And now, having understood who would be in front of them, the jury welcomed the new participant. And the next participant was the main character, who stood on stage and looked calmly at the jury. One of the judges, namely Sunbae, was surprised to see the guy and read the role he would play. At this time, director Koo Dae-myung said that he would not say a word. The guy could do whatever he wanted, and in general, he could just leave. To which the red-haired man decided to calm the director down and take everything upon himself so that the director would watch. Turning to the side, Han Jun-woo, Chun Myung cried out the protagonist's name. Showing the sheet of paper filled in by the boy, the blue-eyed man asked what the kid wanted to show with this, and whether there was a character with that name in the film. To which the main character responded with an imperturbable denier face, and added that he himself came up with this name. After listening to the guy's answer, the red-haired guy asked him why he did it. He wanted to stand out, and how he could just come up with a character that wasn't even in the film. After hearing many questions addressed to him, Jun-woo replied that he did not make anything up, and recalled how the participants were told to write a name, even if the character did not have one. So he wrote it. After listening to the main character's answer, Chun Myung asked the main character if this was not the same thing. Realizing that he was too pushy and that the public wouldn't like it, the blue-eyed man decided to calm down. Exhaling, Chun Myung reminded Jun-woo that there was a limit to how loyal the jury could be simply because the kid was young. Turning to the boy, the man said that he should end this argument with the judges now. People watching from the sidelines the conversation between the main character and the blue-eyed man saw the evil Chung Myung for the first time. The redhead himself thought about how this scene would definitely attract a lot of attention, but the man felt like the guy did it for no reason. Tired of listening to the angry Chung Myung, member of the jury, Sunbae decided to pick up the microphone and ask the guy what the reason was. But at that time, the red-haired man tried to dissuade the man in glasses from interfering. Listening to the jury, the main character did not understand them himself and what they wanted from him. But after Jun-woo decided to tell why he chose this role, the first task was to choose the most important character in the film. Among other characters in the movie Dark Spirit Island, he was mentioned by Jang Mir-young. She said that about 5 years ago, she saw someone get into an accident one day and just walked past. She confessed that this is the only sin in her life. This is the character, the main character concluded. After listening to the guy in front of him, Sunbae asked him when the line of this character is pronounced. The protagonist replied that the line is spoken at the 23rd minute 48 seconds, when Jang Mir-young sits on a rock and begins his monologue. Not expecting such a complete answer, the man asked the dark-haired man if he knew everything down to the second, since he had little time to rehearse, and when was the last time he watched a film. Thinking about the fact that the guy couldn't say it was 20 years ago, he decided to say that he watched it recently. After listening to the main character's answer, the man in glasses asked another question. Why does the guy consider this character the most important in the film? Hearing the question of the man opposite, the dark-haired man immediately began to answer it. Jun-woo chose this character because if Kim Moo-myung didn't exist, then every character, the story of the film, and all the other elements would simply not work. After hearing the reason for choosing Jun-woo, Sunbae asked another question. Whether the guy is sure that without this character, the other elements would not exist, to which the guy answered positively. To which the man in glasses asked the next question to the main character. Whether he thought that this would only be his subjective opinion, the man said, recalling how half of the participants chose Baek Do-hyun or Ta Sang-min. The guy, in response to the man's question, explained that Baek Do-hyun is definitely the most influential role. But in the second half of the film, he shows the typical behavior of a person who finds himself in an extreme situation. The protagonist added that he felt it was intentional, but that this emotion can be expressed through other characters as well. After listening to the guy's opinion about Baek Do-hyun, the man asked the main character what about Ta Sang-min. The same thing happened to him. Jun answered no, and added that Ta Sang-min shows the widest range of emotions from start to finish. But he noticed a few lines in the middle where his character fell apart a bit. Addressing the jury, the protagonist said that they should please not misunderstand. The guy is not saying that the film is imperfect. It could be a deliberate depiction of character fluctuations. Sunbae, holding the microphone in his hand, did not say a word to the guy, because he was very surprised by such an answer from the young boy. But after thinking it over, the man said that rather than listen any longer, he would rather see it with his own eyes. The director of the film, whose roles Junwoo was talking about, did not utter a word, but only listened and thought about the boy's words. The man remembered the starting point of each event, the gist of the story he had written when composing the synopsis, the character he had loved from the very first line. But he had never appeared in the film, and no one had noticed him, not even the creator. Looking at the main character Koo Dae-myung, it was striking that this guy had determined this. The man himself was thinking about whether it was even possible to play a role that appears for 5 seconds and consists of only one line. Seeing the main character in front of him, the man with glasses thought about how someone could call Junwoo's actions reckless. But if you look at it from the other side, it's a smart move. Since this character is not revealed in the film, it will be easier to play. For roles with specific personalities, judges have certain standards for evaluation. But with Kim Moo-myung, everything will be fair, even if the boy himself made it all up. Let's see who the main character decided to play. A maniac, a psychopath. And so, Junwoo began to play the role of his character, starting with a line in which the main character must play a desperate man who asks for pity. Sunbae, looking at the beginning of the main character's performance, had already determined the age range, and thought that for this participant, this could be the maximum of acting talent. But suddenly Junwoo fell to his knees and changed the concept of his role, becoming a boy who, with his last hope, begged for his forgiveness. The main character's aura completely enveloped the man in glasses during his performance. Sunbae was very surprised to see the new look of Junwoo's character. The person himself thought about how, as emotions change, he can see the various mood swings of the character. As Sunbae pondered, he thought about how he didn't understand at first what story Kim Moo-myung was going to tell, but the longer he watched, the more the puzzle came together. The main character has already managed to switch the emotional role of the character to one who is not sane. It's a long story of the collapse of the characters of Dark Spirit Island, the life of Baek Do-hyun, the life of Tae Sang-min, the life of Jong Mir-young, and even the lives of the supporting characters. The whole world is revealed, everything is connected and comes from a person named Kim Moo-myung. While thinking about what was happening on stage with the main character, the man in glasses' hand began to shake. After the main character's game ended, Director Park realized that everything was not going well. Looking at Junwoo thanking the jury, the leader decided to take a break. But Director Park was beaten to the punch by a man in glasses, who was moved by the boy's performance, who, without holding back his emotions, stated that, to be honest, he cannot believe what recently happened, and he does not know if he is qualified enough to judge it. Afterwards, the man exclaimed and asked the main character how he managed to analyze the character so thoroughly. When asked by the man with glasses, Junwoo revealed that when he tried to understand Kim Moo-myung, he ended up understanding the other characters as well. After the dark-haired jury answered, they asked again whether the guy wanted to say that he prepared all of this because the topic was roles. Junwoo replied that the topic of the first task was characters, and so he prepared for it accordingly. But the boy's answer was followed by the next question. The guy wants to say that he understood other aspects, such as directing and camera movement. To this question, the dark-haired man answered that he simply read a large number of books and theories. The man, after listening to the main character's answer, assumed that he had an intuition and then asked the following question. If the guy couldn't find the words, then how would he prove it? The protagonist replied that he himself was not particularly sure about this, and added that he could show it, but it would not correspond to the topic of the task. To which the director asked Junwoo if he could prove it if necessary. Upon hearing the question, the guy said that for him, it would be no different from simply rewriting things to suit his taste. Chun-myung told the protagonist that he doesn't have to force himself to show what he's worth. To which the film's director told Junwoo that he would like to see the main character's performance, but Director Park, who was standing behind him, did not like that everything was not going according to plan. After many questions and requests for the main character to play, he exhaled heavily and agreed with the jury sitting in front. Junwoo added that it might take some time, probably around 23 minutes. The man in glasses looked at the young man standing in front of him and was very surprised to learn that it would take 23 minutes. Sunbae was already looking forward to the main character's performance, thinking that he and the other jury members could now see a short monofilm of this character. Thinking about the upcoming performance, the dark-haired man with glasses broke out in a cold sweat. The man could never have imagined that one person's performance could be so impressive. The jury wondered if it could even be called a game. There were no words to describe it. The man with glasses laughed and thought that the more he thought about it, the more absurd it became. The man wondered looking at the main character. This guy is trying to be promoted with the help of the name Gil Jun-ho. Chon-myung still didn't fully understand what was going on here, and how they were going to go live again. During all this time, director Koo Dae-myung did not say a word, thinking about what he, the creator of this film, could not immediately think of. Chun-myung noticed Sunbae sitting next to him, who was also balancing between remaining serious and just bursting into laughter. Looking again at the man with glasses, the red-haired man noticed that he had returned to his normal state. The man in glasses himself was thinking about how this young man might not have shown even half of his talent today. If he had seen him in his youth, the man would have immediately wanted to leave acting. But the problem arises when it appears on television, Sunbae concluded. And after some thought, the men announced that filming would resume. Viewers or ratings are not the real issue. Actor's kingdom will be buried. This guy will attract unprecedented attention, the man with glasses concluded. After some thought, Sunbae made a decision and approached Koo Dae-myung, asking him with a serious expression when the second round would start. Having moved to director Paku, he sat in pitch silence with his charges. The man himself was thinking about where he had gone wrong, because he had not expected that everything would start to fall apart so much that he would have to cancel the broadcast. But the silence was broken by Yu Sang-jun, reminding the leader that they had just started, and if they were not careful, the whole scenario would go to hell. The director said, if this got broadcast, it would be too late. The man thought about the Actors' Kingdom as a huge cooperative with many companies from all over the world, and now everything is starting to fall apart because of this child, the man thought. Director Park snapped out of his thoughts and reminded the man in the blue cap about the drama Yoon Young's company was working on, and the man shared that a lot of money had been invested in it. The leader added, ordering the man in the cap to arrange a meeting with them immediately. The man in the cap asked why this was necessary, to which Director Park confidently told the man that the company should leave one leading role vacant.